Welcome to another episode of Invigorate Your Business with George Stroumboulis. Today, I get to sit down with this powerhouse duo that has redefined storytelling in Hollywood. Charley and Vlas Parlapanides are a dynamic force of creativity and innovation. Hailing from humble beginnings in New Jersey, these A-list screenwriters have become synonymous with blockbuster hits and groundbreaking television series, including Immortals and the Netflix series Blood of Zeus.
It's really, you sell a script that gets you invited to the party, and then you have 5 years to kind of prove whether you should stick around or not. Yeah. And a lot of people fade out.
To give you some context, Netflix has the top 10. We were number 2. Number 1 was The Queen's Gambit. Charley said we're like the Rocky Balboa of screenwriters. And it's actually so true. Because we just keep getting pummeled and, knocked out. But somehow we always just kind of manage to get back up.
Charley and Vlas are leaving an incredible mark on the entertainment industry. They are proud Greek Americans, family men, followers of Christ, and some of the most down-to-earth people you will get to meet. So sit back and enjoy this episode. My name is George Stroumboulis, and I'm extremely passionate about traveling the world, meeting new people, and learning about new businesses. Join me as I sit down with other entrepreneurs to learn about their journeys. This episode of Invigorate Your Business starts now. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us. It's our pleasure to be here, George. We love what you're doing. We love how you're promoting Hellenism, other Greek Americans, and just business in general. And I think this is an important platform just for people to share their experiences, because that's how people grow and learn. Especially
Amazing. Thank you.
I second all that. And the fact that you're truly a great, nice guy just makes it all that much sweeter.
That's awesome.
Well
Thank
done.
you, guys.
Well done.
Thank
Great
you.
intro.
Great ambassador for the Greek people. And Canadian, I don't want to leave that.
We got to get that in there too. Yeah, I appreciate it.
The first person who hasn't mangled our name. So there you go.
I mean, if I do, I'll tell you though, by writing this, I'm like Charley and Vlas or Vlas and Charley?
Oh, one sec. What is that?
Is that Scorsese? Is he calling right now?
Sorry, did I not turn my phone off? I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, don't worry.
One sec.
We'll keep rocking.
Sorry about that.
So let me ask you, when you're doing this, is it hard doing it together, or as brothers?
It's it's interesting because a screenwriter that was far more successful and famous than us said that writing is problem solving, and it really is. In many ways, it's problem solving. So when you have two brains attacking a problem, it's just so very helpful. Be able to bounce an idea off of each other. And the other thing is that there's no one that I trust more than my brother. And we've reached a point now too, where it's not about egoismo or ego. We really, feel like we always, both of us, I know in my heart and my bones that he always has the best interest for the characters and for the story. And to work with someone where I know that's the case, that's just a huge blessing. There are times when we disagree, and that's when I hate, but it's only because we both believe that that's what's best for the character's story. It's not from a place of ego. And then, it just comes down to who's more passionate. Or if we have a third person, we run it by them.
Right.
Bounce it off a director or a producer. Be like, hey, these are the two versions we're kind of, going back and forth on. What do you prefer?
Yeah. We had a situation on the script that we were working not too long ago. Yeah. And where we disagreed and we did that very thing. And the director sided with Charley. And it was great because at the end, all we want is what's best for the characters in the story. We don't care. We don't care where the idea comes from, whose idea it was. All that matters is servicing the characters in the story.
I was watching an interview, one of your clips, and you guys were talking about an idea that came, and you were quick, Vlas, to jump in and say, and that was Charley's idea. Whatever it was talking about, I'm like, man, that's really cool. If something's eating someone inside, usually you just stay quiet, but it was genuine pride. You guys are a team in doing this, which is amazing.
We grew up in a very close-knit Greek family. You know what that's like. And we love each other. We love our siblings. We love our cousins, and we just want the best for each other. And so there's no his success is my success and my success is his success. And we don't care. It doesn't matter. It's just about moving the ball down the field. That when it comes to work, that's all that matters. And, listen, any good joke in anything we've ever written is always coming from Vlas. Sometimes I have an idea, sometimes he has an idea. That's what Vlas said before. What's great is that there's two of us, and it's just, just exponential brain power attacking a problem. And
it's good at crossing the bad ideas out.
Yeah.
Because when you say something out loud, and like when you just know, that like it kind of is dead on arrival, or right away we both light up, so you get to the good ideas sooner when you're a team, because you're discussing things and you're crossing off the bad ideas off the list.
Ben Affleck had said recently in an interview, he likes writing with a partner because it avoids you from going down unnecessary dead ends. Because he goes, you'll pitch an idea to your writing partner, and we experience this. Like right away, if it's a good idea, they perk up, they sit up, their eyes come alive. If it's a bad idea, it's like, well, like then it's like, all right, no, don't worry about that. Let's what about this? You just move on, and so it's a great filtering process.
Like reading the room.
He's very good too at seeing the ripple effect. He's much better at it than I am. So I'm like, if we try this, it's like, yeah, well, if we do that though, then it'll be this, and this that'll happen. And that's why we can't use that.
But sometimes you still have to try, because you could be like, well, again, it's just like Eric Roth, who's a very famous writer. He wrote Forrest Gump and Dune, and he's one of the all-time greats in our business. He said, being a writer, what it means is that you'll write 30 or 40 pages of something and be like, you know what, this doesn't work, throw it in the garbage and start again from page 1. He goes, a lot of people, they want to write, but once they hit that first obstacle, or the idea of throwing something away and starting over and having all that sweat equity just go to nothing, he goes, that's where you delineate between the writers and not writers. Wow. And so sometimes you have to try it, and it might not even work, and you might go into it saying, hey, I'm not sure if this is going to work, and you crash and burn. But there's other times where you're like, even on this script Vlas was talking about, where we, asked the director, when we first got the note, we're like, will this work? Does this make sense? We're not sure. But what we've learned over the years is just be open, try, and see where it goes.
Best idea wins.
Best idea wins. So there's so many directions we could go with here. So we're going to get into heritage and family and everything. But when you're writing something, you guys have had success, right? And if you're looking at the start of your career in this space to where you are today, how early on did you see success? Because I couldn't imagine wanting to be in this industry and years go by and you haven't had success, because success means no money to pay the bills. How early on did you guys see success that, hey, we can do this in this industry?
The one thing I'll say, bro, then I'll let you jump in, but the one thing I would preface all of this with is that, a good analogy I always tell people is that in baseball, if you get a hit, 1 out of every 3 times or 3 out of every 10 times, you end up in the Hall of Fame if you hit 300.
Right.
But that means you're failing the majority of the time. That's this business. You have to be okay with failure. You have to be okay with rejection, because the majority of the time, that's what you're going to face. It is not a business for the meek of heart. There has to be a certain amount of fortitude where, okay, you're going to take rejection and you're going to just keep pushing. But, listen, there was a lot of struggles and a lot of, hardship and failure, and it took a long time. And I think even there was a point, I think with Live Bet, which was the very first script we ever sold to a studio, to Universal, I think we kind of said, like, this is going to be the last one. Like, and if this doesn't sell, then maybe we should do something else. And that happens to a lot of people. Our good friend, Derek Kolstad, who wrote the John Wick movies, and Nobody, he was going to move back to the Midwest. And John Wick was like one last script.
Come on.
Yeah. And so,
it was known as Scorned.
Yeah, that was
Scorned. Okay.
And Keanu said, why don't we just call it John Wick?
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool name. And that name, it's actually Derek's grandfather.
Come on. Yeah. So Keanu came up with that.
Yeah.
So that moment that you guys had, where were you in life?
But there's a couple things that's interesting about that moment, because there was that definitive moment, and because there was a lot of rejection, a lot of struggle, and it really was kind of a moment where I remember just praying and being, God, if it's meant to happen, let it happen. If it's not, it's okay. I can walk away from it. I gave it, my all. And we're always kind of looking for signs. And Charley and I both believe there are no accidents in life. And so at that time I was, a golf caddy. And that's how I was making ends meet, because I wanted to make sure that, I could write as much as I could during the day. And my day was very flexible. And so I had that intense prayer. And then the next day I went to the Caddyshack, I sat down and I was actually reading the Wall Street Journal because Charley was getting a free Wall Street Journal because he had taken a LSAT class. And as I was reading it there was like 40, 50, caddies in the Caddyshack. A guy came up to me. He sat down next to me. I didn't know him. I started talking to him and he said, that dream, he goes, that prayer, your prayer is going to be answered. It's going to come to pass. And it just hit me. Like, I just got all emotional and like, I couldn't believe it. And like, maybe like a week or 2 weeks later, we sold that spec script Charley mentioned, Live Bet, to Universal. So, when they talk about, God talking to you, the universe talking to you, I think you also kind of need those little moments in life to kind of, give you a little more hope and to reinvigorate your kind of psyche and to kind of give you something to kind of forge ahead. But going back to adversity, I always joke with Charley, we love Arthur Miller. We love Death of a Salesman. Yeah. Arthur Miller is just like one of our,
all-time favorite,
probably our favorite playwright, all-time favorite. And
Better Off Dead Than Alive. Grade 11 mandatory reading for me in high school. That was...
And a reporter asked Arthur Miller, how did you write Death of the Salesman? And he said, oh, that was easy because that was really about failure in many ways. And he goes, 98% of what I experienced before Death of a Salesman was failure. So I knew when the time came to write about it, I could do it. So I was like, oh my goodness, if that was true for Arthur Miller, we were failing 99% of the time. So I'm like, that's only 1% more than the great Arthur Miller. So we're actually doing pretty well here.
That put it in perspective for you, right?
So as Charley said, failure is a big part of it, but you get some of those wins and those wins sustain you and give you energy and allow you to forge ahead. And, but failure is part of the game. And if you can't deal with it, then, you're probably not going to make it. You have to kind of, what can we learn from this? And then you move on, you forge ahead.
Yep.
But for the people watching, it was a good, I would say 6-7 years of, where, we were kind of working menial industry jobs, writing, trying to, write that script that would kind of get our foot in the door. And, there's a lot of rejections. There's a lot of like false starts. We had like a little horror script that we had a really cool, Irish director on that we had high hopes for, but ended up not selling. But there was a lot of scripts that we wrote and we would send out and pass. Right. There was one script, that was kind of like the story of our family, and people really liked it. But they said, this is really a great story and it's very heartfelt and it's this nice coming of age story, but it's not high concept enough. And so we saw that like, okay, people are responding to the writing, but now we have to listen. And that's one thing that, I would just emphasize to any young writers or people that want to get into this business. You have to listen to the feedback you're getting and you have to take it in, absorb it, and never lose your enthusiasm for what you're doing, but then try and listen to what they're saying to the feedback you're getting. Now, listen, if one person says it, that might be just their subjective opinion. But if you're giving a script to 4 or 5 people and they all kind of give you the same feedback, then you have to listen to that and you have to, really look at that. But we said, okay, no more of this, like, this is a nice script, but it's too small. We're going to write something high concept. And thankfully we had a high concept idea, but we said kind of like, maybe this is the last swing. Like, we had started kind of in the late 90s and it was like 2005 now. And so it had been, like 6-7 years of rejection. And it's like, listen, we worked hard. Our parents sent us to college and we went to good schools and we could be doing other things that, are maybe more financially rewarding.
Sure.
So maybe this is the last swing, but thankfully that one, that one really came together. And
what was it that?
It was a heist idea. The script called Live Bet, and basically the very quick elevator pitch. And when we say high concept for people out there, you can write a really beautiful, small story, but it's much harder to sell that. The execution has to literally be perfect. If it's high concept, it's an idea that the audience can easily understand. So with this idea, we open up in downtown Manhattan. We see this guy steal a car. He comes flying out of the parking garage. He goes racing towards the Lincoln Tunnel. As he's going towards the Lincoln Tunnel, we see there's a police cruiser there, and they see this guy. They're like, look at this guy. He's going 80. He goes 100 miles past them. They put on the lights, they spin around, they start chasing him. He comes out of the Lincoln Tunnel. He gets onto the New Jersey Parkway. More police cars and state troopers are falling in behind him. They're chasing him. And then what we do is we pull up and we see there's a drone flying above, and it's actually filming this police pursuit. And basically what you find out is that this thief has a team that help him escape the cops. And actually people are taking bets on how long he can evade the police. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, New York to Atlantic City, place your bet. And it's this live bet. And then this FBI agent kind of takes note that there's these like police pursuits where the guy's actually getting away from helicopters, and like that never happens. And he starts to deduce that there's this ring going on and that they're taking bets and that these whales are betting on these police pursuits.
Really cool.
And that was the idea. And
it was lightning in a bottle. Yeah. That one was in lightning in a bottle. And we were at William Morris, we always were, at that time, and they had 50 Cent, and they said, what if we make that guy 50 Cent? We're like, we love 50. And so he got attached. And they had a good relationship with Mary Parent and Scott Stuber
at Universal,
who had a producing deal at Universal at that time.
Who ran Universal at the time.
Yeah. And that's right. That's before Donna. Anyway, they slipped it to them and they bought it in the room. They didn't even want it to go out preemptively. Yeah.
So I don't know how much you could disclose financially, but so this is year 6, 7, early 2000, late 90s when you guys do.
2006.
Are you 2006? Married? Babies?
Engaged. I was engaged to my wife.
Yeah, no, I was single.
Okay.
I'd started really kind of dating. There had been a time there where things were so lean, where I was working, and then writing, that I just put blinders on, and I was just so focused on just trying to make it, read every script I could possibly get, write as much as I possibly could. There was a time when I briefly worked on Wall Street. I was on Oppenheimer's foreign equity desk, and literally, you have to put in like, I don't know, like it was like 10-hour days there. And then I would just, write when I came home, write on the weekends.
Jeez.
So that, when we sold that script, that's when I said, okay, now career seems to be, we kind of falsely thought, we got invited to the party. Now it's going to be easy.
That's what I wanted to ask you. At that point, when you sold
dating,
it, was it, hey, now we're here
full
time?
We had a writing friend who was older and very successful. And I remember telling him, he said, congratulations. And he goes, now you'll see if you can actually, have a career. Yeah, you'll know in 5 years. I'm like, what's this guy talking about? We just sold the script. Of course we're going to have a career. Like, it's not only hard to get in to Guild and then to be a professional writer, but it's also hard to maintain that, career.
Of course.
The average, writing career is less than 8 years.
Is that it?
Less than 8.
And it's either 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 writers after they sell their first script never sell anything professionally again.
Yeah. See, I thought if you have this creativity and you're good, you could do this into your 70s, 80s.
We thought that too.
No way.
No, it's not that way.
It's really, you sell a script that gets you invited to the party, and then you have 5 years to kind of prove whether you should stick around or not. Yeah. And a lot of people fade out. Yeah.
So you guys are the Tom Brady in this space because you've been going and going.
We've been very lucky. That same writer, he said something that was very true. He said, there's writers that are far more talented than me that never made it. And there are writers that are far less talented that are way more successful. The key is just to stay in the business, keep trying. Then when your opportunities come, take advantage of them.
Take advantage.
And that's just the truth because, the thing with our business that I think is probably what drives most people away is that, like, if you want to be a doctor, you go to, you study undergrad, you study biology, then you go to med school, then you do a residency, and then there's a career path and there's a trajectory. You want to be a lawyer, you go to college and you go to law school, then you work as an associate. And if you work 8 years as an associate, then you can make partner. In this business, there is no trajectory. There is no path. And so what's hard is you have really smart people, but the only way you get better as a writer is to write. You have to just keep writing. And the more you write, the more you work that muscle, the stronger it gets. But to write, you need to basically do some survival job to pay the bills.
Right.
And then you also have to then make sure you dedicate enough time to writing. So on the weekends, you're writing. At night, you're writing. You're not, going out or doing all these things because there's just not enough time in the day.
You guys are all in.
You have to be all in.
You have to be
all in.
And your background, so this is amazing feedback. Let's go back to New Jersey. You guys are East Coasters living here in California, right? Started in Hollywood, now Orange County. Greek immigrant parents, right? talk a bit about the history, but then you guys grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, right? Hot dog stands, diners, parking lot managing, right? Doing all that. And then to keep your parents, I guess, happy and to show them, you went and studied economics at a college. You went on to work on Wall Street, to go for a law degree. Did you guys do that to come back and say, look, mom, dad, I did this, but this is my passion? Like, was your passion always this even while you were studying economics? Like, how did you?
This was always the passion. And to be honest, our parents, like, we could not ask for better parents, like, because it was all unconditional love. They were supportive. Thankfully, they were dreamers. So there was never like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you pursuing this? They said, if this is what you want to do, go, try. And there was never pressure from them.
No, there never was. And I think
but we felt a responsibility.
Yeah. So, we're all, fathers here. And so it's not what you tell your children, it's what you do that truly resonates. So we saw how hard our parents worked. Our mom used to work. She had a county job. She was at the Ocean County Board of Elections. That's where she worked. It was a clerical type job. She did that Monday through Friday. And then Friday night, she would go to the parking lot and she would try to wave cars into our parking lot that we had. And New Jersey gets cold in the winter. Yep. It's like, it gets down to 30 degrees and you see her bundled up after she's worked, all week. And she's there Friday night, Saturday night, trying to scrounge up $170, $200, because that time of the year, it wasn't as busy, it was slower. So you see that kind of hard work, that kind of dedication, and never complained about doing it. Our father also worked,
2-3 jobs.
He worked a county job and then he would bartend on the weekends at a country club. And so when we went, being, raised in a Greek, immigrant home, education was always valued. And it was something that was very important for us to do well in school. But they did it in a, I think the right way. They never said you have to get A's, even though we got A's and B's. They said you have to do your absolute best. And
just try your best. Whatever the results are, but just try your best. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Which I'm grateful that they did that. And that's something that we share with our kids.
The effort, not the result.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we, Charlie went to Swarthmore, I went to Villanova, and we just felt, even though we had that creative itch or bug, whatever you want to call it, we felt like we needed to do something a little more responsible in terms of major. Right. So econ was just a little more, if you were to tell someone in New Jersey at that time when we were growing up that, we wanted to be a screenplay writer, they would look at you like you had like 3 eyes on your head.
Right.
What is that?
That's impossible.
That's impossible.
His godfather, who was like, in construction, was very successful.
Amazing human being.
Right. Like the nicest, beautiful human being. Like, captivated businesses.
As much as we love our culture and they support, not very
building a house, that's a business.
Yeah.
You understand that.
You build a house for this, you sell it for this.
Yeah.
I get it.
I can touch this.
People need houses.
Exactly. So we wanted to do something responsible. We kind of went with the majors that were, just a little more acceptable because we just felt like our parents had worked so hard. But, then for me, I had an epiphany my senior year. And that really kind of pushed me towards a creative endeavor. I still knew that I had to get a job to pay off some of the debt that my parents had incurred. And they were great too. They took on those student loans and then they paid off those loans. And that was a huge gift that they gave us because they were working class people and they made sure that, our education was going to be paid for. But while I worked on Wall Street, I knew that I wanted to pursue something creative. And, that was there, and that started from my senior year, and we can maybe go into that later. But
your senior year,
knew I wanted to do something creative, but I knew in the meantime I had to work and try to make some money. And I was on Wall Street for 2.5 years. I made a short film while I was there, learned a lot from that, and then was just again reading screenplays as many as I could, writing as much as I could, and then we made an independent film after that. And that film got into the AFI Film Festival, which was it's a prestigious film festival, but it wasn't that film, that launched the career. It got a lot of got some great press. It got, picked up for distribution by the Shooting Gallery. The Shooting Gallery at that time had produced Sling Blade and You Can Count on Me, 2 films that we absolutely loved.
Yep.
But however,
we were also very naive too, because like we came out here for AFI, the American Film Institute, their film festival every fall.
we were clueless.
It's kind
You
of
came
like,
out here, like California, from Jersey to visit.
just for the week of the festival.
Okay.
And that's kind of the start of like the fall awards campaigns. There was like, the Coen brothers had a film there.
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And these 2 Greek agents who were at Metropolitan, which was like this really good boutique literary agency, they saw the film they really liked and they said they wanted to sign us. And we were like, nah, and like looking back at it now, it's like we were idiots.
Yeah.
Like,
No way.
To sign right away.
Yeah,
That would have been your first shot at.
I don't know what we were thinking.
But I don't know what we were thinking. We were like, holding out for a better deal. I don't know what,
But you said it earlier, though, every decision or whatever, it was meant to be at that time that you didn't accept it and struggle a few more years, right?
Yeah. And so, it proved to us that what we were doing worked because like you could feel the audience and the reaction. And we got, good reviews in Hollywood Reporter and Variety. They were all positive reviews.
Wow.
So that was some sense of validation, but it wasn't like Vlas said, like the Clerks or Brothers McMullen, where it kicked open the doors and then you work consistently from that point. We've unfortunately always kind of come in at the tail end of like, we missed the indie scene. And then when we got into movies, like the DVD market died. And so the movie business kind of died. And like, we've always kind of like just come in at the end.
Right.
But it's okay. You persevere and you work and you learn. But again, like Vlas had said initially, like there's always these like little victories. We're like, no, keep doing this. You're not crazy to think you can do this. But it wasn't, again, where the floodgates open and okay, great. We sold something for a bunch of money and we're being offered stuff. Like, that was still, 6 years away.
Charlie said we're like the Rocky Balboa of screenwriters. And it's actually so true. Because like we just keep getting pummeled and, knocked out. But somehow we always just kind of manage to get back up and,
and get back up with a positive attitude. Like, all right, this happened. It sucks. We're going to let it suck for a day, but then just move on.
With positive results too, though. Like your resume, we'll get into that, but like it's been incredible.
We've been very lucky. I agree. I'm convinced only through God's good graces and our mother's prayers.
I agree.
Because,
I agree 100%.
Honestly, because like it's just always a miracle that any of these things have worked out and come through. And so,
It is. That is the word, when something gets produced, especially nowadays, it's a little miracle because so many things, there's so many variables.
Right.
And everything has to come in alignment and it's just very rare and it's a very, difficult thing to actually, to get a film or show or anything made. It's truly a little miracle.
Yeah. And there's so many, so you guys are in Jersey, you come out here, I'm sure you had to work a bunch of crap jobs in the meantime.
Absolutely.
And, understudies.
You work as assistants. I worked as an assistant. I worked at a production company. Then I worked for a big producer, Scott Rudin, who was notorious as like the worst boss in Hollywood. Learned a lot from him.
Was he the worst?
I mean, like, part of it is like, I don't know. I can't probably even say because the times have changed so much. But back in the early 2000s when I worked for him, like getting stuff thrown at you and yelled at, like we grew up in a very blue collar working class town and played a lot of sports. I had football coaches, hit me in the helmet and shake my face mask. So Scott yelling at me didn't ever intimidate me. But it was a very tough job. But, from there, then I worked as an assistant at Paramount for the vice chairman of the studio. And there were just always opportunities to learn. And even when I worked for Scott, I would bring home scripts or I would take home dailies and we would watch them, in our little apartment in New York. And like, it'd be great to see Denzel doing The Manchurian Candidate and see him take after take and how his performance would, change and how he would take direction. And all of that stuff was valuable.
Right. You mentioned something and or you highlighted it, and I'm glad that you did. You have to be all in. So let's just look at some people, because what we used to do is we used to look at people that, that guy, we really admire his career and we want to have that. Well, how did they break in? What did they do? So you look at Oliver Stone. He was a cab driver, and he was writing as much as he can because you need that job where, you're focused, you're all in on your writing, and you have to write as much as you can. And so you need the job where it's just, it doesn't consume you per se. Yeah. Then you look, let's look at James Cameron. He was a truck driver. Let's look at the, Wachowskis. They were in construction. So, and
Dan Gordon was a garbage man.
Dan Gordon was a garbage man who did the Hurricane.
Murder in the First.
Murder in the First. And, even Tarantino, he was working at the video store. So, but what they all have in common was, obviously the passion, the talent, of course, but also that singular vision that I'm going all in. And I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to have some survival job to do just to pay the bills. But my focus is going to be, my writing.
Well, and how do you have parents that left, right? Your family's from Asia Minor, right?
Smyrna. Yeah, both sides. Lineage traces back there.
Both, okay. Mm-hmm. And we can talk a bit. And then Patra, right? Mm-hmm. They come to America, like any immigrant, not just Greeks, any immigrant that came to another country, didn't know the language, didn't have help. How can we not be successful in our generation? You just said your parents put up debt to cover you to go to college.
Yeah.
How, those are the true heroes.
Absolutely.
Right? So how do you not go all in? There's no language barrier, right? God forbid you guys didn't make it. You still have a family to support you.
Absolutely.
Right? I always say that people take for granted even the little things on education being covered today, where it's just assumed oh no, mommy and daddy will cover it. No, it's a grind, working jobs. I still to this day, and I don't know, maybe I need to talk to a therapist about it, but I feel guilty on weekends when I'm I'm not working today, when my parents into their 60s and 70s were working 7 days a week. My first job out of university was in Ireland. And I remember when I first moved there at 23, the weekend would come around and it was a corporate job. I'm oh no, what do I do? My parents are working back home at the restaurant. I went and got a bartending job just because mentally it didn't make sense. So just tying that all in, when you come from that, you're destined to success just from hard work alone, right?
You feel an obligation, and it's something I carry proudly, and we carry it proudly, that we had such amazing parents where their children were everything. And they didn't want to go on vacations, they didn't, parea, or, everything was for their children. And so we now have the responsibility to make sure everything we do is for our children.
Absolutely.
And in a lot of ways, it's also why we've also just stayed focused on writing, because it's nice to be home and to be around our children and be there for our children. If you are a director or a producer and you have to go away for 4 or 5 months, that's a very different life.
Absolutely.
And so, we're very blessed, and everything we do is to honor our parents.
And I like I second all that. And what I also just want to kind of piggyback off is the hard work. There's no substitute for hard work. And that's true for anyone that's successful. Look at Michael Jordan. When he came into the league, he didn't have the jump shot that he really kind of wanted, or the jump shot he ended up, perfecting and developing. He worked hard. He would practice before practice. That's Michael Jordan, who has, look at the talent that he has, yet he worked very, very hard. So all the people in whatever field it may be, when we find out more and more about them, you can look at Will Smith. No one works harder than him. He works super hard. You can't cut any corners. You have to work hard. That just comes. But it does help coming from, an immigrant kind of, family where you see your parents working hard. And we used to work weekends for the longest time. Now we have families. And so we spend time, with the kids, but there was no
but even our managers, you guys are always working hard. You guys don't stop. You'll finish this thing, you jump to the next thing. And that's just, the mentality we have, is that, and we give ourselves deadlines and self-imposed deadlines, and we push ourselves, because in the end, that's just what you have to do. What we've seen, people always ask, in any business, one essential factor, unless you're brilliant and you invent something completely new, is that you just work really hard.
Yes.
And if you're good at it because you worked really hard and you put in the hours.
We believe in the 10,000 hour rule.
Absolutely.
And also too, we were so naive, and just when we started out, there were scripts that we shared with people that we never should have shared, and that's also advice we would give to, a young up and coming screenplay writer, don't give your first script to that connection that you have as we did, because,
you're just not good enough.
You're not good enough. And you look at writers who are like, look at David Ayer, and he didn't say, like, he got really good about his fourth, fifth script. And that's kind of how it is with
around
most
like your
writers.
sixth or seventh script.
Fifth, sixth, seventh script is kind of like where you really kind of, reach a point like where you can be considered as someone who writes a script that is
You're beyond the neophyte. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but we learned that the hard way, because the first script, we thought it was great and we would give it to people. And you know what? It kind of wasn't. It needed more work. It needed the 10,000 hour rule. And we huge proponents of rewriting. Good writing is rewriting. So, again, and it goes back to that hard work. You have to be willing to do that.
Absolutely. So I read something online, maybe on your IMDb. Yeah, IMDb. Immortals, right? You guys got a fat check, right?
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was a great one. So we're going to talk a bit business podcast. We're going to talk a bit about the business. We're going to get into Blood of Zeus, but you were paid, it's public, so I feel like I can share it, but $1 million for that script.
Yeah.
But to get it made, you guys actually gave back 20% of that to come in within budgets to see it come to fruition. If you didn't do that, would you still have gotten your $1 million?
Well,
I'm just curious how...
Part of it is you want to be a team player, and they always try and squeeze you at the end. One thing that when you read like articles in Variety or any of the trades, Deadline, the way screenwriting works. So for Immortals, it was $250 against $1 million is what we sold it for. That story, though, what went into that is crazy.
We should tell them that. That's part of the business.
Okay.
Tell them the whole thing. It's great.
Just in terms of the vernacular and kind of the terms of art for our business. So when you say $250 against $1 million, you get $250,000 now. And then if it gets produced, you get $1 million, with the caveat that if you get sole writing credit, you get $1 million. If you get shared writing credit, then you get half of that bonus. And then if you get no writing credit and just a story, you just stay at the $250. And so, but that story, what was kind of crazy, is that obviously the guys that produced 300 were our producers on that project. And Mary Parent, who had bought our first script while she was at Universal, had gone to MGM. And she read the script, she loved it, and she wanted to buy it. She really felt like this is the way into Greek mythology. And I think at one point, she had offered like $1.5 million, and we could be the first writers in on the Red Dawn remake.
Yeah.
But the producers were convinced that Warner Brothers was going to buy it. And so they were almost just kind of almost using that offer as leverage with Warner Brothers. But long story short, as that was unfolding, another executive at Warner's had sent their Clash of the Titans remake to Louis Leterrier. And he said, I'll direct this. And once he came on board to Clash, Warner's was no longer interested in buying Immortals.
Another Greek mythology.
Yes.
Because now their Greek mythology project, all of a sudden...
They don't want to compete with themselves.
Yeah. And all of a sudden they got a director on it. So that became more real.
And so basically, once Warner's went away and Mary realized the producers were kind of trying to just use her to drum up the price with Warner's, she's like, no,
see you guys.
And
she was out.
So she was out. So we went from like, we're going to sell this for $1.5 million.
We went from 3 studios wanting it to almost like no one wanting it.
In a matter of how...
Yeah.
2 days.
From like,
2 days.
Yeah.
2
From
days.
like, $1.5 million to zero.
To zero.
Wow.
To zero.
Our manager at the time was like, guys, maybe we should consider doing this. This is a lot of money on the table.
A lot of money. Like, why?
You should but
we should just take this offer. And we were for it, but in the end, the producers kind of controlled.
We're quarterbacking the situation.
Long story short, after that debacle, so we went from 1.5 million to zero. Then Relativity came in, bought it for the $250 against $1 million. Then as they were getting towards production, basically they said, like, guys, we need to get the budget to this number. If we don't get it to this number, it won't get made. Now our lawyer was like, tell them to F off. This is the deal. Don't do it. But like the director took a pay cut. Henry Cavill took a pay cut. Like we felt like that's not who we are. Like we're team players. It's still getting made. We still got paid. So, we didn't get the $1 million. We got $750.
It was
700 or 750. We had to give back like $200,000.
We had to give back $200,000
to come to see it to fruition.
To have it get made.
Amazing. I remember seeing it at the time too. Like that was just such a cool.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. And listen, it was just, we're so grateful it got made. But
And I just want to add to the power of an idea. So we had this apartment in Park La Brea at that time, and Charlie was sitting at a desk. You know, we had 2 desks. He had one and I had one in my room. And he was just working on something. I'm like, bro, and he was just working on it. And I was like, what is that? What are you working on? And what he was working on was basically the way into Greek mythology and what ended up becoming, you know, Immortals. At that time, we called it War of the Gods. And it was just a really, really great idea. We talk about ideas. When he said the idea, it was alive. It was just alive. He said, like, there's this character and he's going to he basically pitched the Hyperion character.
I think Rourke story.
Yeah. And then I said, you know, and then I said, well, and he should be going for a bow. He should be going for something powerful. At that time, it was like a little bit different. And then it just all started from there. But it started from that idea, him working at the desk. And then when we cut to being on set and you see all these, you know, people that were employed to make the movie, you see the art department and Tarzan, there's no better visual director than Tarzan. So to see how he worked and how he, you know, would work with the art department and they would pull different stills from different art books and different images, and to see how like that inspired what he was going to do, and to see that creative process was truly amazing.
So you guys were on set. So you write this, comes to fruition, and then you actually go on set during.
Yeah,
it's a great learning experience.
We had a great, you know, rapport with Tarzan, and so we went to set on Immortals, and it was just great to see him work and see it kind of come to life. And
to be 100% honest, we got rewritten by 2 other writers, you know, and there were some.
Can you explain? Sorry, what does rewritten mean? They just come in and hijack your script?
Well, they come in. Listen, the reality is in this business, in the movie side of things, it's a director-driven business, and the director gets to tell the story he wants to tell. And so they reached a point where, you know, they brought in 2 other
more
writers,
seasoned, older writers,
more seasoned, who, you know, I would say there was one writer, the writer that they brought in at the end,
did an amazing job.
Fantastic.
We told him because we read what he did, and what was great is that because so if they want, you know, like Tarzan wanted this one character that Joseph Morgan played to be a bigger part of the story. And so they brought in another writer, an older writer, to work on that. And then, again, in features, like Vlas said, the director is king. In TV, the writer is king. But in features, like, if you don't do what the director says, you get fired and they bring someone else in. It's they're steering the ship. They are the general.
And there's 2 points. It's a subjective business too, you know. So the initial idea for Immortals was to do Lord of the Rings in the world of Greek mythology. Yeah. Okay. It was more in that vein. It was more fantastical. Yeah. It was, you know, but as Charlie mentioned, when Relativity came on board, there were budget kind of limitations, and we were never able to really do that.
The draft that we sold cost, they said, like $145.
They said even 160 at that time.
And they
sub 440, whatever.
But basically what they told us is that if you can get the budget to $75 million, we'll make it.
Yeah.
And so we just sat with Tarzan. We said, hey, this is like a creative experiment. Can we? And we would literally go for 6 months. And this is when Vlas was saying we were working 7 days a week. We would go to Tarzan's house for the weekend. He lived in an amazing house, and he still owns it. It's Herb Ritz's, the famous fashion photographer's old house.
Okay.
It's this beautiful house up in the hills. We would go to his house on the weekends. We would go through the script, be like, what do we need? What can we lose? What can we truncate? Is there a version where we basically are cutting the script in half? And then so we would sit with him all weekend, go through scenes. Then we would go write the whole week, send him the pages. Then the next weekend we would go through the pages that we've written and keep reshaping and reforming. And then to finally get it to the version that is the movie now, that basic spine was what we laid down. But to be honest, we were burnt out after that. I was exhausted.
There's a couple times where you just remember, and I never felt more bad for my brother than during that time, because I was exhausted.
Right.
And we were working our butts off. And then he had to go and take law school exams.
A baby.
Oh, that was still
He
going
had
on.
a baby,
Wow.
and so this guy right here, because I was working with him, I was right there, memorized. You know, they do these outlines in law school, and they're, I don't know, like how many pages? 70 pages, 60 pages, 50, depending.
No, a good outline, you get it down to 25.
25, but he's got more than one exam.
Right.
And he memorized these outlines in a weekend.
While you're rewriting.
He had to go in. So he wasn't studying. because we were writing 7 days a week.
No, but you learn to be smart about things.
I don't know how he did it.
So what I would
just don't
do-
know.
No, that's
He
insane.
passed-
Plus a baby?
Plus a baby.
No,
Yeah.
And
My wife,
writing
though,
7
Eleni, was
days.
great about kind of holding down the home front.
Herculean. I
But
just
this
felt
was-
so bad.
This was a chance for us to get a movie made, and we felt like this is an opportunity we have to take. And also too, we've just learned. You definitely, I believe, as a writer, the more you do this, the better you get. We would have done things completely different and approached it differently now than back then. But then we were young writers. This was in 2008. It was we were very lucky that it's kind of crazy. We'll see what happens. But. The first 3 specs we wrote, we sold all of them. Immortals got made. That was the second. The first one, Live Bet, the heist one, is still alive and well at Netflix, and we're hoping it can get made there.
Oh, so that's still pending, even though that was your first. Okay.
Yeah, they got
bought
it
it
at
at
a
a
turnaround from Universal, and so now Netflix owns it. And then we have that third script we wrote, the one we were talking about where we got the notes from the director. We're praying, knock on wood,
That's acrylic. Let's reach over here a bit. All right.
that in April it might get produced in Bulgaria. So fingers crossed. We had tried to.
Which is pretty amazing.
That's amazing, guys.
Yeah.
Can we get it to Greece instead of Bulgaria?
That's
No
what
offense.
the
we
studio
had
is in
pitched-
Bulgaria.
We had pitched
Oh,
in Thessaloniki,
Yeah.
but their main studio is in Bulgaria, and they have a New York backlot there, and they had us reset it in New York for that reason.
That's incredible.
It is. And, again, it's a testament to just how hard he worked. And again, just kind of, doing all you can to try to make things, try to be successful as much as you can be. But the other thing that I just wanted to add too, even in that process, and it was an amazing process on Immortals, and we learned a lot, and the way it works is that, in arbitration, the new writers have to prove that they changed more than 50%.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to do that. And that's why we got sole credit. But there were contributions that I think were good. And there were other things that, maybe we disagreed with. One of the things that Tarzan had pinpointed, and we had, like, when we finally got that final script, one thing that was lost was the character arc of Henry, the character arc of Theseus. He starts off mad. And in our initial version, what we were hoping to do is to have him go from non-believer to believer.
Yeah.
And once he became that believer, he is able to overcome the adversity in his life. He's able to let go of his anger. That got lost. So he's angry the whole way through. And that was a criticism that a lot of the critics had brought up, that, there wasn't that character development, but there were 4 scenes that had been lost in the shuffle. We told Tarzan, we need these 4 scenes. And he goes, oh my God, Henry's telling me this. He's telling me this exact thing. This has happened when we were in Canada. But by that time, the studio locked the script. They didn't want to go there. They didn't want to rewrite it again. Jeez. And they were a little hesitant embracing, the believer side of all of it. So that just got lost.
I remember Tarzan saying, because this is one of Henry's first movies, he said, if he was Brad Pitt, this would get pushed through.
Right.
But we just don't have the juice right now.
Wow.
But he goes, because we said, we read the latest draft when we flew up during pre-production, and we said, Tarzan, there was these scenes we used to have and we need that. And he goes, Henry's been saying this.
Yeah.
He goes, oh my God.
Yeah.
And he made a pitch to the studio, but they just said no.
They just left it.
This is it. We want to shoot this.
I have so many questions because I know nothing about this world, right? So for example, 250 grand against the million if it gets produced. When you're doing these 6 months of rewrites on the weekends in the Hollywood Hills, that doesn't change. That's you saving the script essentially.
Yeah, I mean, there are steps built into a deal. So for that 250 against a million, it was called a 4-step deal. The first step is the script. Then there are 2 rewrites and a polish. So in that 250 grand, they don't just give you a check for 250 grand. They give you like 100 grand. And then for the first rewrite, you get 50. And the next rewrite, you get 50, or 75, 50, and then 25. And they break it out into steps. Now, do they adhere to those steps? Do you do tons of free work? Yes, you do tons of free work. And there's a whole campaign by the Writers Guild to stop this free work and to try and now sometimes you can fight to get put onto a weekly, but part of it is that, like, when a project has momentum, and this is the thing I didn't understand when I was like growing up. I went to work at Paramount, I'm like, there's projects where the studio says they'll make it and they're giving offers to actors and the actors say no, and otherwise the movie would get made. Like, I was like, oh no, I didn't understand like what happens. And Scorsese had said this once, that great directors chase great stories and then great actors chase great directors. because the actors know the directors will make them look good. The directors want to tell stories they're interested in. And it's the projects where you get the actors and directors at a budget number that makes sense, that then those movies go forward. And so it's this strange kind of alchemy that has to happen. So part of it is like, you want the director to be happy because the director may be developing 3 or 4 projects at the same time. And whichever one he's most passionate about, whichever one comes together, you're trying to kind of please him, you know. And then the director's job with the studio is to try and convince talent to get involved or to attract talent. Right. One of the reasons I think Relativity bought Immortals at the time too is that Tarzan had a good relationship with Channing Tatum, because Channing Tatum was on the verge of quitting the business and Tarzan cast him in a commercial. Tarzan was a huge commercial director. I think he put him in like a Pepsi commercial.
The Michael Jordan of commercials.
Yeah,
no
he was
massive.
Him, Michael Bay, Marcus Nispel, those were like the huge commercial directors of the 90s, and music videos. Tarzan did the Losing My Religion, the REM song.
Oh, yeah.
That won him like a MTV award. But so Channing was always grateful for the opportunity Tarzan gave him. And so I think even for like a couple days, Channing was attached.
Yeah.
But then Tarzan had Channing come over to the house and he's like, do you really want to do this? He's like, I'm just kind of doing it because I feel like I owe you. He's like, no, then this isn't right for you.
Well, he was concerned too that he looked kind of too American, which was also true. Like in Greek mythology, he didn't. And I think his concerns were valid.
Yeah. He is your Abercrombie looking.
He's your Abercrombie looking guy. Yeah, exactly.
That's so exciting. So now on the mythology play, let's talk Blood of Zeus.
Yeah.
You guys go from Hollywood, traditional in theaters, now to Netflix. And you guys have a great relationship, it looks like, with Netflix.
It was a massive, massive blessing. And, you know, Charlie talks about it and maybe he should even speak to it. But like, you know, we had been up for like, 4 or 5 jobs and we were like perfect for a lot of them and we just weren't getting them. And we were just really kind of bummed out. And then, and
to the way writing works is that you have in features, you have 2 options. You can either write something on spec, which means speculative work, which means you're just writing it, you're taking your time and you hope that when you're done, someone will buy it. But you're going to invest 6 months of your year, writing this. Or you can kind of go for what are called OWAs, open writing assignments. And what those are is that like the studio will we just optioned this new book and Harry Potter. And what they'll do is that they'll have an approved list of writers that they would consider hearing takes for. Or your agent will try and submit you for it. Like, hey, will you hear a take? And this is how writers audition. So, there's this new Harry Potter book that's just been optioned by Warner Brothers. We ask our agents, hey, we read that they optioned this. Will they consider hearing a take for us? And then if they say yes, you go in, you say, well, this is how we picture the movie. You open up and you pitch your version of it. Okay. And that's how you audition as a writer.
In person, you guys go, you pitch it.
You go into the studio, you pitch them your whole take. And that's what Vlas was referring to. There was 4 or 5 OWAs that we chased, that we pitched. One in particular, the one at MGM, like the executive wanted to hire us. He said, your take is by far the best take we've heard. But The Rock was attached as a producer and both potentially to star. And he's like, you have to pitch his producing partner and you have to pitch him. And long story short, they ended up hiring a friend of theirs. And so even though the executive wanted us, and we had an awesome take, and I still think to this day, at some point, we'll sit down and write that because it was an original take on this idea that they had. But we were really kind of like, this is crazy. Like, we should have gotten this job.
Wow. And then, go ahead. No, tell him. And then John, tell him.
John Derderian, who's the head of animation at Netflix, he had sent an email and said, hey, do you just want to come in for a general meeting? A general meeting is where just like, you go in, you meet them, it's a general meeting. There's nothing kind of on the docket, but smart writers and what you kind of are taught to do is that you bounce a couple ideas off of them. They'll tell you what they're developing and to see what you might be interested in, and you tell them any ideas you might have.
Gotcha.
And at the time, John had come up from business affairs and is a practicing lawyer. He said, I'm so tired of these like IP deals. I'll spend a year, 18 months negotiating. He was the one that was behind Castlevania becoming an animated show, which has become a huge hit for Netflix. But he says, sometimes I try and do these deals and the companies are so difficult. Do you have anything in the world of public domain that could be a cool animated show? And we're like, oh, funny enough, we've always had this idea for a cool, Greek mythology show. It's kind of a deconstruction of the Hercules story. And these 2 brothers, obviously Hercules and his brother, they're allies and they both go on to become, part of Jason and the Argonauts and but it would be cool if they end up becoming enemies. And so he's like, oh, that sounds very interesting. And we kind of wrote some pages for him. But part of the whole point of that is that, we were lamenting that we didn't get this MGM job. But if we did, we would have been busy writing and we might not have gone in for that general meeting.
Right.
And that basically led to us working in animation. And that was a prayer answered because COVID happened after that. So all the, live action television shows, live action other movies, they came to a grinding halt. And here we were kind of protected during that period of time because we were working remotely. We were working in animation, which is where everyone wanted to work. And that literally saved us. That was a lifeline in many ways. In addition to that, that became one of the most gratifying projects creatively and professionally, because it was the first time in our career where we were involved from inception of idea to completion, because we were the creators, the executive producers. So we got to tell the story we wanted to tell. We didn't get rewritten. For better or for worse, we said, this is the story we want to tell. This is how we want to tell it. And we were blessed to have a group of people, from our director, Sean Negocian, on down to all the animators, who embrace the mantra of best idea wins. Keep the egoismo out, keep the ego out, best idea wins, and everyone bought in and everyone focused on that. And so it's the story, like I would say even for myself, like that I'm most proud of, because also too, you have an arc for our main character. We remembered in Immortals, how those scenes that were taken out, we're going to make sure we're going to give our main character this arc. And we also have an idea for his long, series arc for the antagonist and for the protagonist.
Yeah.
So, and it was just so gratifying to work on that, to work on Blood of Zeus, because again, like the story was just unfolding exactly as we had hoped it would. And it was also for us, and I would say even for me, and I think it's true for Charley too, it's always about creating a television show, a movie, telling a story that moves us emotionally. Does it move me emotionally? And then you hope that if it moves you emotionally, that it'll move the audience emotionally. And that's something that Scorsese had said. And when I had heard that, I'm like, that's exactly it. So for me, it moved me emotionally. I was engaged. I just wanted to see what was going to happen next.
Right.
And so when you believe in it and when we saw it, we really felt very good about it. And then you share it with the world. And thank God it was a massive hit.
Massive, right? In 2020, wasn't it
the number two animated show in the world that year in terms of views?
So Blood of Zeus, just so the listeners understand, and we're going to put up the visuals and everything and links.
Yeah.
In 2020, it was the number 2 animated show on Netflix.
In the world. Not even just
in the world.
In the world.
Come on.
And outside of China, they don't release their numbers.
Sure.
And also in China, you can be like the 10th show and do like 1 billion people because there's so many people.
They don't count.
But yeah, in terms of our parlance and what we talk about in our industry, because we don't take those numbers into account. But yeah, you can say we were the number 2 animated show in the world that year, outside of, not including China.
Yeah. To give you some context, Netflix has the top 10. We were number 2. Number 1 was The Queen's Gambit,
which deserved to be number 1.
Okay, deserved to be number 1. Show. And it was an anomaly. That was like a juggernaut. Otherwise, we would have been number 1. And the beauty of that, out of all their shows, not just number 1 or number 2, in the animated space, in the live action space.
So
all of it.
When you go to Netflix and it says the top 10, is that based on just total views? There's no algorithm that pulls.
We had close to like 16 million views. Which
Are you kidding me?
So normally
in the first 30 days.
And to give you more context, Netflix normally waits at least a month before they decide whether or not they're going to renew you for a second season. After 10 days, they came back to us and they said,
we're ordering more.
We're ordering not only a second season.
Yeah, but just still.
And so after 10 days, based on the numbers, they said, we're going to order, and they, like our producer, who worked with them on many projects, that they've never done that.
Guys, that's incredible.
Very lucky. And but to bring it back to our parents, the one thing I will say is that we knew John Derderian because I went to Swarthmore with him.
Okay.
And I gotten into other schools and had been offered scholarship money. Our parents were like, no, you're going to go to the best school you get into. And it doesn't matter what we can afford or what we can't afford. That's where you're going to go. And so because I knew John, we had this general meeting. And so that's why, I don't care what anyone says, whatever love and effort and, energy unselfishness you put into your children, God will find a way to reward it somewhere down the line.
Absolutely.
Because, again, we've loved working on Blood of Zeus. We've loved working in this animated space.
Yeah.
And during COVID, when we were writing the second season, all of our live action friends are like, there's no work. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start Uber driving, but there's no one to pick up. I might have to do, what was it, when they deliver the food?
Yeah.
And I was just like,
Postmates, all that stuff.
Postmates, and where they go to the supermarket and they grab all your stuff. I'm like, thank God we have work. And that's why we say it's our mother's, very devout in the most beautiful kind of way.
Yep.
And I really believe sometimes her prayers, they go, and they get us where, thank God.
You're a product of that. Like, you're obviously
100%.
living it. Like,
I absolutely believe that, because again, we were trying everything. We were trying to, book all these other, jobs. No one knew, what the pandemic was going to be. And so, when John said, hey, do you have an idea for an animated show? And then we came up with it. That was like, that was a prayer answered. It really was. And then it became something that was very successful and something that we just absolutely love doing, and something that we want to continue to do.
Absolutely.
We want to continue to work in animation. And, the writer who has, been a dear friend had said, it's always about trying to keep the momentum going. And this is advice you can give to like young screenwriters. So he would say, try to keep the momentum going. And I didn't fully understand it until we really, started working in the business. So you have some momentum in the feature space. Great. And then that can lend you maybe momentum into the TV space. And they just have a movie coming out. So maybe you can sell a TV show.
Go pitch something in that arena.
Yeah. Or maybe you have a movie that didn't perform and that kind of gets cold, but now you have a TV show that all of a sudden is getting some momentum. Or if you have an animated show. So you're always trying to keep the momentum going.
Yeah. The iron's hot right now. It's always been hot, but it's like now people are seeing, and the following for Blood of Zeus, you see it socially online. I recently downloaded them and I started, and I'm like, man, this is great. Like, I studied Greek mythology. As a kid, you would read the basic stories, right? Less gruesome. And then in university, we had courses, and now I'm like, it's bringing me back again. Right.
We stand on the shoulders of our heritage.
Absolutely.
We read all the time, and we always tell young writers, if you want to be a writer, you have to read. And we've read other, mythologies and other corpses of literature. And man, Greek mythology, it is amazing, because everything we're doing, we're using all the archetypes and tropes from the ancient stories.
Absolutely.
We always say the popularity of the show, and it was extremely popular, is a testament, not about us, to Greek mythology.
Yeah.
But you guys are bringing it though. You guys are very
But people
humble.
love Greek mythology.
They love it.
Yeah. So they even had a metric, at Netflix, because they have metrics for everything. So it used to be called, Gods and Heroes. And John Dodarian actually said, hey guys, you know what? Like, if you take the word Zeus, Gods and Heroes, he had like the metrics, and like some people especially in the Asian countries, they didn't kind of know what that was about. But when you take Zeus, the metric of Zeus, like everyone had heard that. And it was in the 90-something%
globally,
so
right?
Globally. You got to have Zeus in the title. Just come up with something Zeus,
He said 2 or 3 words with Zeus in the title, but figure out a new title.
Yeah. And we said Blood of Zeus. He goes, that's it. You got to be Blood of Zeus. And at first we were a little hesitant.
To be honest, to be fair, we were kind of stuck, and we're part of a writers group. And we said, hey, this was the title, and Matt Altman came up with it.
Yeah.
We said, our current title is,
Gods and Heroes,
but they want 3 words, and with Zeus. And this is kind of what the story, and our one writer friend, Matt Altman, said Blood of Zeus. And we're like, oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And we gave John like 5 of the suggestions, and he's like, no, that one, Blood of Zeus.
See, so Netflix, that's interesting. You get that instant data-driven feedback.
Absolutely.
Where if you're sitting there and the person that you're pitching may have a bad day, or you're getting that feedback instantly. That's incredible.
They know, like, okay, something needs to happen at the 2-minute mark, at the 5-minute mark. If you pass the 7-minute mark, then the probability that you're going to see the whole episode goes up to 90%.
Right.
Yeah.
We also had a very high completion rate where people saw the entire season. That's important, because then the executives know, oh, well, if they saw the whole show, there's an appetite for a second season.
Yeah.
Right.
So like, you can look at some of the shows. I'm not going to mention them. There's one that was huge on Amazon, but there wasn't a big completion rate.
Yeah.
There were a lot of eyeballs
checked it out.
Saw the pilot, didn't really care for it the first episode.
Dropped off.
Yeah, and then it dropped off.
Wow.
So we're proud of that.
So how do you write if Netflix chose to carry this on for 8 seasons, 10 seasons, could you, like, at what point does the story, the mythology stop and then you take it further? Can you?
There's a natural endpoint that we have for 5 seasons.
Okay.
And now their business model now is to do like 3 or 4, because they've said that, unless it's like a classic show, like it's Friends or Suits that already exists, that was built under the syndication model. Most people, if it's too long, they're almost daunted in taking, like, this is 100 episodes. Like, I'm not going to have time.
Never get through it.
So they've seen that 3 or 4 seasons, like that's like the right amount for them and their business model and what they see young people in terms of their streaming habits.
Okay.
So that's their sweet spot. We have 5 seasons kind of arced out. We've never seen kind of, what ended up happening is there's no kind of end times kind of Armageddon type story in Greek mythology, because basically Christianity came over and overtook it. So we have an idea for that would be the end of Blood of Zeus, like this kind of Armageddon story. Now, whether we get there or not, it will all depend on viewers.
I just want to say something too. We love our fans.
Yeah.
Our fans have been like, they're some of the best fans in the world. And we feel their pain because there's been a big, gap in time from season 1 to when season 2 comes out. And, we feel their pain. We can't get into the particulars of that, but like, I totally understand where they're coming from. The good news is that, it'll be here the May 15th, the 2nd season.
May 15th. Okay.
Yeah.
2024.
Super, super proud of the story. The story we think is really great, and it's timely, and it has a great message without being preachy, and it's all, entertaining. And so, and we just encourage them to please watch, because if they do watch it, it all depends on how season 2 does. Yeah. If season 2 does well, then we'll be able to get a season, more seasons.
More Blood of Zeus.
More Blood of Zeus. And there's also a spin-off that we have for Medusa that is awesome, where we cross-pollinate some of the characters in Blood of Zeus and we bring it into the world of Medusa. And so if they want that, and if they want more Blood of Zeus, and if they want a Medusa spinoff, they have to watch season 2 and tell all their friends to watch season 2.
Oh, amazing. We got to make sure.
But that's why, George, is like the Blood of Medusa script, I'm super proud of. Like, that is awesome. Where I like, now, God willing, we'll get to tell it. But in this business, you never know.
You never know, yeah.
So you just hope. You just hope.
Do you guys own the IP for Blood of Zeus, or once you work with Netflix, that's theirs?
They own it all.
They own that. Okay.
They own it all.
That's true for every studio, network, streamer, that they, the writers lost that. What was it, bro?
We gave up copyright. To get back
60
in the 50s,
years ago, 80 years,
to get health and pension. So to have health insurance for writers and pension, we had to give up copyright. And that's, the Guild will tell you, it's one of the things they regret most. But when you give up the copyright, then they own all those bundles of rights. And George Lucas, who made Star Wars, he negotiated a deal to keep because at that time merchandise didn't exist. And then he made so much money on it, the studio said, never again.
Right.
Will we give that?
I love that. And also too, and this is in a roundabout way, going back to live bet, in that, you never know what's best. And again, there are no accidents, because there was a time, we can even just walk you through that, because that's a great very story. Interesting. Yeah. So basically we had live bet. We wrote the first, we got the notes from the studio. Mary Parent's very smart, so that was a really great rewrite. Everyone was excited. Our agents at that time.
They went out to directors.
Well, they went out to directors.
They went out to.
There was a director that had a big hit at Sundance. We're not going to mention his name. They went to him. He loved it. He wanted to do it. Our senior agents at that time, Ramses and Charesky, were saying, posters on the wall. At that time, Fast and Furious 3 was out, and they said, okay, they want to make this, Universal wants to make this their next Fast.
Because they thought Fast was done. Fast 3 had kind of underperformed. Yeah.
How do you not, just at this point, how are you not getting excited? Like, this is a
super
franchise.
We're on cloud 9.
You're buying vacation homes in Saint-Tropez in your mind already.
Because also we believed in that script. Charlie pitched you, the elevator pitch. And when we took meetings, you could just tell they were just super excited about that script. They were like, they were telling us it was lightning in a bottle. Like, that script was just something, everything just came together. It was like character and action, and it had all the elements. It was just super entertaining. Posters on the wall. Then the director with his writing partner wanted to change it, and they wanted to get writing credit. So they changed more of it. They handed it in. And the executive at that time, Becky Slover, told us, he goes, guys, this is going to make you cry. You're going to make me cry when we read this draft. And we read it and it was awful. It was almost like unreadable. I hate to say it, but it was just really awful. And then Mary said, what are you doing? Why are you guys changing it? She fired that director and his writing partner. They got thrown off. But then in the interim, before we could get a new director, the new Vin Diesel said that he would come back and do one more Fast and Furious.
He talked to Paul Walker and he said, like, what if we all come back and we just do one last one?
Just one last one.
Before the next 5 last ones.
Exactly. And then that became a big hit.
But the rest is literally Hollywood history.
So that just overshadowed.
We got put on the back burner.
That was it. We were supposed to take over and be their new car franchise. But then, it got botched. That director basically dropped the ball. Yeah. The momentum of like, this is a go movie. The studio wants to make it. Because he didn't deliver, died.
Yeah.
And then while Mary tried to find a new director, those guys came back. Universal said, okay, we'll do one more.
Let's just see how this works out.
And then the rest is history.
That's the industry. That's how it goes.
Yeah. Which is funny because we know the writer of that.
He's a really good guy.
It's a great guy. Just a great human being and very talented writer. But that's a funny story. And also and during that process too, there was a time when Warner Brothers was trying to do Hot Wheels. And they basically, the producers, we knew the producer at the time, and they said, we looked at every single car script and yours was the best one. And at that time, they were going to try to buy it at a turnaround for like $1 million, try to get it out of Universal, bring it to Warner's. But the producer had a deal with a different toy company. Yeah. So Mattel was on one side and Hasbro was on another side.
Because they were doing Battleship at Universal. And so the two toy companies are like, no, you can't buy something out of Universal. Like they put the kibosh on it.
The toy companies put the kibosh on it. Yeah. So what we were just like, oh my goodness, like we were right there, and it was going to be made at Warner's and it didn't happen. And now, Netflix, pulled it out of Universal and hopefully they'll make it. And it would be great if it came out, in the next couple of years. That would be great for our career.
But you still
never know
own it now.
No, we don't own anything.
Oh, you don't own it because it was
Netflix. Universal bought it from us, and now Netflix bought it from Universal.
Yeah.
But you always just hope, that it gets made. But in the end, it got us invited to the party. Yeah. We'll be forever grateful. I'll always remember meeting 50 Cent. We went to he was filming a music video in Long Beach, and we went down there. And
it was Lamborghini in it. Yeah. And at that time, though, it was like, wasn't working. So they had to like push
it into the shot.
Come on.
We had to push it.
Trying to dodge. So, a couple things. A-list celebrities, right, that you work with, you write for. Can you share any stories, any names of people that like the positive or negative?
The best one is Sylvester Stallone. We really love Sylvester Stallone, respect what he's been able to do. I mean,
so much respect for him.
So much respect. Really? Yeah, we told him.
Well, because he created 3 franchises.
Yeah.
And, as a star, to write your way into to do Rocky and Rambo and then, Expendables, come up with 3 franchises, nobody does that,
Yeah, and it's funny because he goes, writing. He's like, that's the toughest. Now that's a guy.
He goes, it's like having homework every day.
That's what the way he said it, and it is. I think it's the hardest out of all the disciplines. I think they're all hard. I'm not diminishing any of them. I think to be a director is challenging and writing and acting, but I do think writing is, man, that one's like you're looking at the blank page. Yeah. And so anyway, we told him.
He loved Vlas after this though, because we went in for a general meeting. It was an open writing assignment. There was a movie he wanted to remake.
Yeah.
And, but then when we sat down with him, Vlas said this, and from that point on, he loved us the rest of the way.
Wait. So before you say this, where do you sit with him? You go to his
office.
His office in Hollywood.
Yeah. And what's crazy is that you see he's still jacked.
Yeah. He looks phenomenal.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. He's still jacked. And he shakes your head. And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is, he was probably, because this was 2007. So this is probably he's probably like 60 or 70. And he was way better shape than us.
And you guys are in shape. So for you to be saying that.
Yeah. Well, we love Rocky. If you see Rocky, that film still works. And that film has things that we love. It has heart. It's a love story. And the genius of it is that everything culminates to that last moment when he's calling out to Adrian, which is really hard to do. Just to have it all culminate there because, even Tarantino says it's your ending. It's how you end. When you end with a bang, that's what people leave the theater with. And he just nailed that. So we told him our favorite scene in Rocky, it's not even the fighting. It's none of that stuff. It's the scene where he's in bed, laying down next to Adrian the night before the fight. And he tells her, basically, if I can just go those 10 rounds, I'll know I'm not another bum from the neighborhood. And I just said, it kills me every time.
Because it sets up how he can win even though he loses.
It sets up the end line.
And he's just not another bum from the neighborhood. It's the humanity of it.
And the humanity of it. And it's just, to me, it encapsulates like the movie in such a beautiful way. And it's such a beautiful, tender moment. And when we told that to Stallone, he just like right away got all animated. He goes, the producers told me that we don't have time to do this scene. We're going to go from the scene before it. We're going to go right to the fighting. And Stallone says, no fucking way.
Get out of
here.
Because he said they only had
fighting.
2 days in that location, in his apartment. They only had 2 days and they had filmed everything else.
And they didn't have time.
It was running out of time, so we're just going to cut it.
He goes, if we don't do this scene, I will not do any of the boxing scene. I won't do any of it. And they said, all right. Finally we do it. But the whole time too, because Stallone wasn't, anyone at that time. The sound guy was yelling. He was like, come on, man, we're all tired. Yelling at the sound man. It's just insanity. And then finally the producer goes, okay, we'll let you do it. So he said that.
We'll let you have one take.
One take.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So he said that he went to like the 7-Eleven. He pounded a Colt 45. He went back in and.
Because there's a lot of pressure to do it. You got to get it in this one take.
Yeah. And they did the scene. The next morning, Sylvester said that he was walking, onto set, and the producer just came over to him and hugged him and said, it's the best scene in the film.
He had come out of dailies, he had seen it, and it was like, oh my God.
And so ever since then, he loved us. Yeah, he was showing us
what's more magical, the fact that he fought and left that in, but you guys brought that out. Like, he must have just connected with you instantly.
He loved that.
Because it's the character moments. It's the human moments. It's where we see ourselves in the character. We recognize that character. That's what makes movie magic. That's what makes movies memorable. That's what makes movies, the truly great ones have those types of moments. So I can't picture Rocky without that moment, without him in bed next to, Adrian, just kind of opening up the way he does. And Sylvester Stallone understands that. He understands the humanity of his characters. And, I know, some people in the media kind of attack him for different reasons, but man, that guy, I feel, understands humanity. Right. And, you can ask him, and I was telling Charlie, you got to see his documentary, Slide. I thought it was fantastic.
Right.
Because he asked, what is this movie about? And you have to be able to distill that. And I would offer that advice to young screenwriters, and storytellers in general, know what your movie is about. Is it about redemption? Is it about, revenge? Is it, Woody Allen talks about that. Yeah. Once he knows what it's about, it almost colors every scene. And so I think that's what we've gotten better at. We have a, character overcoming the external stakes, the personal stakes. And then if we can tie in a theme, then that's the real home run. And that's what we try to do. What are we trying to say here? And so, and then he showed us footage from Rambo at that time. Yeah. What do you guys think of this? What do you think of that?
But what was great, it was like talking to our father, because we were talking about, he's like, oh, the Russians, you can't trust the Russians. And it was just forget that.
He was right. He wasn't wrong. That was years ago.
Yeah.
But he meant it.
He was still fighting the Cold War, and it was just great. And listen, there are times there's some obviously silliness in our business, and there was an A-list director. We went to his house in Bel Air to pitch, and I won't say his name, but he had just got back from making a movie, and his best friend was the producer that ran his production company. And what was funny is that he was living in Bel Air and he was rebuilding his pool, and he was having custom tile from Italy that was imported in.
That makes sense.
But there was too many trucks bringing all this stuff in, and the neighbors were complaining about the trucks. So he just bought the neighbor's house and knocked it down and made it a parking lot. But we got there.
He was a 10 against 10 director.
Which means he makes $10 million and then 10% of the gross.
Yeah.
So that's what that's.
$10 million, and then if it does $1 billion, he makes another $100 million. And he had a couple $1 billion movies.
Jeez.
And so he was out there at the pool with the workers, kind of overseeing them. And we were waiting. And this is his best friend from college. And he's like, I don't know, do you think he sees us? Should I go tell him? And it's just like, dude, this is your best friend. And we sat there for like an hour and a half. We're like, oh, we don't care. We'll wait. But he's trying to wait for the right moment. Like, that's when it's the high school with money. Our business can be like a little ridiculous. Yep. And he was totally cool. But like, you do come across those kind of like what we call like entourage stories, like these, ridiculous things. But most people in our business are.
But also like celebrities, this is a really, a good celebrity story. And he was just a pleasure to work with. And it's just interesting because, people in our business talk about certain actors just got that thing. And it's hard to like identify what that is. And I think it's mystical in some ways, but when you try to explain it, like you don't even come close. But when we were on set for Immortals, when you saw Mickey Rourke through the camera lens, there was something that you just gravitated towards him. There was something about him, and I think he's one of the best actors. He is so good. And what was kind of funny, they asked him in the press, this was a very physical shoot. He got into shape, and they asked him, like, what was the hardest part of production? And he said the hardest part was seeing his lines through the smoke machine. It's like his lines on the car. And like he would lean against the wall and his lines were written there, then he would overhear. But he was just but he was a true pro. He was always on time, on set, did the work, and was just a very generous actor. When he dealt with Henry. Another thing that we should mention with Henry Cavill, just a great guy. Yeah. He had been starting, that was like one of his big roles.
In the feature side.
On the feature side, after about 2 weeks, he took out the crew and
threw a party for the whole party.
Come on, his own time.
Paid for it himself. And
That's
it's not like he had a lot of money, but he did it. He's one of the good guys. Was never a prima donna. No. Was always super cool. Frida Pinto was as sweet as they come. A professional, really, really nice.
She played the priestess in
the priestess. Okay. John Hurt, another just true gentleman. He's no longer with us. God rest his soul. He was a true pro. So
it's interesting, when you deal with directors, they're very interesting. I've always found meeting and working with directors are very interesting. And you see that like they put themselves in the movie, their sensibilities. Like there's a very famous writing team. They said you could give 3 spec scripts to 3 different directors and you'd end up with 3 different movies.
Absolutely true.
And you see how they work and their process and how they shape it. And then it's just interesting because actors, they view very much the project through their role and really get underneath the hood of that character and why they're doing it. And sometimes I feel like sometimes we're more the architects, kind of overseeing the whole thing, and they'll be the one that comes in and be like, well, to make this kitchen really nice, we need to do this. I'm like, oh, that's great. And that just, elevates it that much more. Right. So every time, and then some producers are really good creatively and some producers are just, in it for a million other reasons. You know what I mean? And we've dealt with all different kinds.
Could you guys, without stepping on anyone's toes now, or do you have aspirations to go to the direction side?
Absolutely. I've always, that for me has like always been something that I wanted to do. It's always been something that, I have a true passion for because you get to tell the story the way you want to tell it. Yeah. And we had that experience though, thank God, because we had a very talented director in Blood of Zeus. We were able to tell the story exactly the way we wanted to tell it. We've not been afforded that opportunity on the feature side or even in television. But we have a project that we would love to direct. And again, for us, it's all about telling the story the way we want to tell it, for better, for worse. Yeah. And again, about evoking emotions, first in ourselves, and then in doing so, God willing, in the audience. So there's a project that we're trying to, put together where we would be directing. And I feel like we would do a good job with it because we can wear that hat. We have theater experience. Charley studied with a very, very talented, theater professor at Swarthmore. I studied with William Esper for 2 years. He was a disciple of Sandy Meisner. Sandy Meisner was, one of the kind of huge, famous, super talented.
He's Hyman Roth in Godfather 2.
Not Sandy. That's actually what's his name? Oh my goodness, that's
not Meisner.
That's Pacino's acting coach. Yeah, from Method Acting.
Yeah,
I'll think of it. Yeah. You had Adler, you had Sandy Meisner, and you had Lee Strasberg. And that's who was in The Godfather too. But they were the pioneers when it came to acting techniques. And it all stems from Stanislavski, who was in, the
who
Russian
based some
great.
of his stuff on the traits of Orthodox monasticism. But that's like a whole nother conversation.
Really?
Yeah.
But to get back to it is it's all about films that we love have an emotional truth. Some of our favorite films, like obviously The Godfather, there's emotional truth, and we're always chasing that emotional truth. And when an actor works in that space and he's not indicating, he's really doing it, that's what you try to capture. That's what you try to, put into the film. And I think audiences, they may not be able to articulate why they like a certain performance over another performance, but 9 times out of 10, it's because someone's really doing it. They're in that emotional truth space. And that's something that we would, imbue in our work directorially. And that's something that we would chase. And
we have an actor attached to play one of the main roles. We were waiting for the SAG strike to end to go try and get the female lead. And so we hope, like with this business, you have to have many irons in the fire, and you hope they come together.
And you hope and pray, whichever one is meant to come into fruition, that it happens.
That it is coming.
Because again, Blood of Zeus, we never would have guessed would have been that project that was just, a godsend.
And when we say that too, you work as hard as humanly possible. You do everything within your purview to make it come to life, but then it's out of your hands.
It's out of your hands.
You know what I mean? So it's not just like, oh, we wrote this today. We hope let's see what happens.
Right.
No, we're always working and pushing and trying to think. But what we've learned is that like you try, you do what you think, you come up with a plan, and then after that, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And who knows what happens and why.
Yeah, you can't control what you can't control.
Yeah. And we're in a position now where we can direct. Charlie's daughter's a little bit older. My kids are a little bit older. I have 2. And it would be an indie film, so you're gone for a month, and then you do post wherever it is. You can, so it's more doable now. As opposed to say like 10 years ago or what have you. Yeah. So I do think that everything does happen for a reason. I feel like God has a plan for all of us. The only choice that we truly have, in my opinion, is are we going to be honest with ourselves or not? And once you're honest with yourself and you really kind of listen to that inner voice and you pray for strength and guidance, it leads you down a path. And there'll always be adversity. I mean, that's just part of it, as we talked about, there's failure and adversity. It's how you deal with that. And there's, we did a project with, about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She came up with the 5 stages of grief. And what she believed was that during adversity and during even something that happens to us that's, tragic, you can either come out shining, you can become a better person for it, or it can cripple you, it can destroy you. And life can do that. And we've seen, sadly, even friends that have had difficult experiences, life has crippled them. And it hasn't, they haven't come out shining.
Right.
And that's why it's also great in that documentary. Sly talks about the adversity. It's so good, I'm telling you.
Can't wait.
Yeah, because life will always have adversity. He said it I'm paraphrasing, but you don't beat life. Life just keeps coming at you. It's how you deal with the adversity that is kind of, that you encounter. And that's so important to try to learn, try to grow. We're all here to grow and learn, I think psychologically, physically, and spiritually. And you can't grow in a bed of roses. It's not how it works.
Yeah, that insight's incredible. I have a few questions from the community, right? And they wanted me to ask this, but before we get into that and advice in general, your insight has been phenomenal, just into this space.
We have a good host.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. I feel like we could talk for hours, and we're going to do more segments because you guys are amazing. Going back a bit, you talked about Netflix. At minute 2, you need to do this to hook the audience. And at minute 5, and you have all these metrics, and then your guild had a strike. And then AI is the big thing that everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
Does it concern you, right, when it's so data driven that, hey, at minute 2, just put it into the bot and we'll get something written? Maybe not today, but as it goes, isn't that a threat to what you guys are doing?
It's an existential threat, and that's why the guild kind of drew a line in the sand. And to be honest, Vlas and I, when all of this was happening, we said, thank God we've had the career that we've had, because I don't know how long our business is going to continue to exist.
Right.
Because currently, this technology improves exponentially. Now, what they approached a showrunner with and what kind of raised flags for the guild is that, hey, what we want to do is have AI pump out the scripts and then hire, instead of like normally in like a, say like a network show, they have 10 to 15 writers. We'll have AI write the first draft and then hire 3 or 4 writers just to polish them and make them more human, because they're not at the level yet where, you know, they can get it. But, you know, in 10 years, 5 years, like, I mean, if you look back 20 years ago, like the idea of a smartphone seemed impossible. So who knows what they're capable of? And I think it's a question that becomes a more fundamental societal question, is that who do we want telling our stories? Because our society is shaped by stories. That's how society works.
Yes.
The stories we tell and share are what shape our ethics, what we think is important. And do you really want a computer doing that? You know, the Authors Guild, which are the people that write books, they did some of their own market research and they polled people and they paid for this research. If a book was written by AI, would you want to read it? And would you want that on the title? And like 95% of people said, no, I don't want to read it. And 99% of the people said it should be made clear on the cover. And so do I think at some point the technology could exist that could replace this? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always blown away by what my friend who's a doctor in Florida from college, he said that in 10 years, you're going to walk in and AI is going to do all the initial screening. And then if something gets flagged, will you deal with, you know, he's saying that's going to happen with medicine, where people's lives are at stake. You think in our business where we're just telling stories, you know, if they could use it, you know, Jeffrey Katzenberg said for animation, it's going to decrease the cost by 95%. And so animators might be out of work. So it's a question of, you know, one of our writer friends, she said, like, can't the robots fix like getting all the garbage out of the ocean first before they become writers? But, you know, we'll see.
It's very interesting. It definitely, rarely in history does a technology come along where it has an effect on multiple industries. So this isn't just in the entertainment industry. This is in just all over.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's rare, I think. So the ramifications of that, I think, are going to be pretty big. But I also think that I do think that, yes, as the technology advances and gets smarter, that it'll be able to do and write certain things, and that those scripts will get better. And and maybe it'll become close to replicating something that's, say, on broadcast TV. But I don't think it'll ever, and this is just my opinion, it'll ever give you The Godfather. I don't think it'll ever give you Chinatown. I don't think it'll ever come close to giving you something as beautiful as The Piano, where there's something that in those movies, I feel like that can only come from a living human being, that sense of soul, that humanity. I don't think an AI will ever be able to write The Godfather. That's just me.
Yep.
Ben-Hur, something like that. I think that requires a human being. And so, you know, what it will be able to create, remains to be seen. But when I think of, like, you know, I don't think you could be able to create The Sopranos or Breaking Bad. That's just my opinion.
These iconic, memorable.
These movies that have the thing that we discussed about before, where you have characters that are growing, that have internal, external stakes, and a thematic that are about something.
Right.
But, you know, I could be wrong. You know, I don't think so.
Our best hope is that copyright law saves us, because basically the way AI works is that it doesn't actually create something new. That's what we do. We stare at a blank page. We take all the influences and everything we've read, but we stare at a blank page and we create something new. AI scrapes through all of this open source material. And then by taking that, then it creates and follows those patterns. And there is a very good chance where if you can prove that, oh, it scraped this Tarantino film, well, that's copywritten. You can't use that to influence the new script. Right. And so I think on legal grounds, maybe that'll get stopped, but who knows? Any technology we've ever invented, we've always used, including the atomic bomb. And you know what I mean? But so there's nothing that humans have ever created that they didn't use. So,
and I think they will use it. And I think it'll be a tool. You know, and I think that tool requires a human being, requires a writer, requires an architect, requires a filmmaker to bring the humanity into the piece. Otherwise, then you have something that's soulless. Yes. And it's very mechanical. On its own, I don't think it can create something that's great. As a tool with people that are very talented around it and using it and imbuing their soul into it and their humanity into it, yeah, then, I think there'll be some iteration of that.
Well, think of the way and I'm by no means a movie buff, but when you look at social media, right, and you scroll for the day and you're just looking at mindless stuff, that's all it is. It's mindless. What really resonates after a few days on a 1-minute clip or very few pieces, to me, it's like movies. My favorite movie of all time, again, not a movie buff, is Shawshank Redemption. As a kid, I've seen it 10 plus times. And then I've seen probably hundreds of other movies where it was like, yeah, that made me laugh for an hour and a half. I couldn't. So you have that type of stuff. We're seeing AI even in my space in lighting and design where, hey, design some lighting, and you have these bots that are doing stuff like that. And then even our marketing team's talking about, hey, we should use AI to write press releases and to do this. And it's that catch-22, like, yeah, it's easier and you could save money, but then we're feeding this machine. Where's this going to be 2, 3, 5 years from now?
Yeah.
And we're just kind of becoming so dependent, eliminating people. I don't know. I know it was a big topic in your industry, but it's affecting everyone.
It's affecting everyone, and there's going to be a cumulative effect. But I just want to speak to, just piggyback off the Shawshank Redemption. So we go back to and we ask ourselves, what is that film about? And that film is about one very specific thing. Do you know what that is?
No.
Hope. It's about hope. It gives you hope. And when you make a movie where you can encapsulate hope, whoa, you have something there. And Jeffrey Katzenberg had always said, if you make a movie that can move people emotionally, you got something. But it has hope, and that's why so many people love it. And sometimes we don't know that, even when we're watching the film, but we know that we love the movie. And why do we love this movie? And if you distill it down and down and down, and you say, that movie there is about hope.
Yeah.
And that's why people love it. And I think that's why it's so popular. Like, that's a movie that when you're, on TV and you kind of just, kind of channel surfing and you just stop and watch the Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, absolutely. And there's so many scenes.
They're great.
Just out of curiosity, what scene sticks out most for you in that movie?
I always love the rooftop scene when he...
Over the edge? Yeah.
Move over, this fucker's about to have himself an accident.
Exactly.
And then I also love... I love the scene after Andy escapes and Morgan Freeman says, maybe I just missed my friend, but I have to remind myself some birds aren't meant to be caged. It's just an amazing
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
Such an amazing.
And when he's, and he's there and he's free and he's like reaching up to the sky and you just feel everything that he's feeling and you're just like there, you're with that character. And I would say the ending too, which is such a beautiful ending. You see the two friends together on the beach. It's like, and you're left with this sense of hope.
And then the old man.
Yeah, Brooks. Yeah.
Right? Carves his name. Yeah. He couldn't figure it out.
It's great.
Dude, it's such a great movie.
It's great. And then they move into his voice.
Frank Darabont should have won an Oscar for that. I sometimes what I'll do whenever we have
Schindler's List. So the Schindler's List
was that Schindler's List that year?
Wasn't it?
No, I think it was the next year.
Oh, was it? I thought it was the same year. Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
But I went back. It was from a novella that Stephen King wrote, and sometimes I'll go back and I'll read the original source material and then see how they adapted it, and they did a masterful job.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because basically, like the whole thing about having that other identity that he was laundering the money through.
Right.
In the novella, he was doing that because he realized he was being charged with his wife's murder, and he created another identity in case he would have to make a run for it. And then that identity is already sitting there waiting for him when he gets out of jail. But it's so much better that he created that for the warden and then uses that to get out. He's not doing it out of a selfish need, like. There were so many changes in there that are just amazing.
Great point.
And
you guys have a different head in this. It's incredible. So I've said this before. You guys, from the first time, I think we met through Spiro, right? Go to dinner, and I'm like,
great guy.
Great guy. Spiro, he's doing his thing.
Makes us all proud.
Yeah, he's incredible. But first dinner, we're going out, and I'm like, oh, they're going to come along, or I'm going to come along. Actually, it's not, right?
No, we're going to come along.
It's just a good group. Just like
it's a good group. Greeks just getting together.
Exactly.
But you guys,
great para.
Like, you're doing your thing in Hollywood, like just at the top of your game. The script on how you guys got here is not conventional. Like, your family didn't grow up in the entertainment. It just doesn't make sense. And you guys are killing it. Everything's coming together. You're just going to keep rocking. But even the first time I met you guys and every time after, it was always like, cool. You guys share stories about what's going on. And then, how are you? What's going on in your world? Like, you're just good humans. Like, it's amazing. And here's a great example too. So a couple months ago, I'm at my daughter's soccer game. She's 8 years old. Her teammate's brother was at the game, 10-year-old Jackson Gunderson, right? Just shout out. And he's sitting there at the field and he's writing stuff. I'm like, hey, what's up, bud? What are you writing? He's like, oh, I'm writing a script for a TV show idea, whatever. And we started talking. And I'm like, dude, that's just so cool. And he's an athlete, right? And this is his spare time thing. And I go, wow, I know a couple cool guys in the industry that do this professionally. Who are they? I pull up your website. Yeah. And he's like, are you kidding me? You know these guys? I'm like, yeah. He goes, man, I would love to meet them at the field. I text Charlie. I'm like, Charlie, this, and this. I go, can you make yourself available for a coffee or something? He's like, tell me when and where and I'll be there. I would love to. So it just shows, right? And this kid, every time I see him, he's like, man, I go, when your dad's ready, we'll send Charlie some dates and so in the meantime, he has 3 questions he wants to ask you right now.
That's really cool.
We've touched upon a few of these, but his first question, how did you sell your first screenplay and who bought it?
Great question.
It's a great question. So part of it, what did help, there's 2 sides of this business. There's the actual work, and then there's the business kind of hustle side of it. So when I got out of school, I worked a couple jobs as an assistant. I worked for Scott Rudin. I worked at Shooting Gallery. I worked at Paramount. And working as an assistant, you just get to know people. And we had actually befriended a manager.
Todd Harris.
But no. We got the script to Dan Farah, and he gave it to Brooklyn. No. Because Brooklyn was the first one on board for live bet. So through a relationship that I had, as you work in the business, you just get to know people.
And they gave it to
everyone. All the assistants have other aspirations. We're not there to answer phone calls and get coffee. And so through a young manager that I got to know working as an assistant,
that's right.
We gave him the script. He really liked it. He gave it to a more senior manager.
Right.
That manager, Brooklyn Weaver, really was like, this is great. And then what happens is when you're an unrepresented writer, the major agencies will not take unsolicited work. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I showed up at your door and I have this script. They won't accept it. The way they kind of vet them is usually through managers. And if a manager they know and trust reads it and likes it, they're more likely to take unsolicited queries and scripts that are not from unrepresented writers. So Brooklyn liked it. He had a good relationship with this young agent, Mike Asola, who was at the William Morris agency at the time, which is one of the 3 big agencies. He slipped it to him. Mike's like, I love this. I want to. And it's not that they sign you. It's that we'll try and sell this. And if we sell it, we'll work together. But if we don't, hit the road.
Multifaceted step, right?
He also gave it to senior agents.
Ramses Jareski. Mike Jareski.
They loved
Ramses
it.
Shock.
Okay.
And then, so like it got a certain momentum. So Asola loved it. Ramses Jareski loved it. And then they gave it to 50 Cent's agent, who also loved it. And
so then he became
attached.
No way.
Yeah.
And that helps you sell it once someone big is attached.
Yeah, because then it's talent friendly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, it is a very subjective business, and some people are afraid to say like, oh, I read this, I like it, I believe in it. The way they judge it is, does it attract other talent? Does it attract actors? Does it attract a director? Oh, if these talented people like it, then it must be good. That gets the stamp of approval. Like Vlas said, it's now.
And to be clear, that was when 50 was at the height of his success. There was no one bigger.
He was massive.
There was no one.
He was having his
that's when he was on the top of the mountain.
There were 2 leads, and it was going to be 50 Cent, and then Mark Wahlberg was going to play this. But at that time, 50 was bigger than Wahlberg. Now, Wahlberg, from then, he was always great in like Boogie Nights and was a star in his own
right.
Calvin Klein boxers look crazy.
We love him.
But I have so much respect for him.
Okay.
But
that shows you at the time, that was 50's moment. But then those agents, because they had a relationship with Universal and had just were representing other clients that had a big hit at Universal.
The breakup.
They slipped it to them. And they bought it preemptively. Sometimes I think we could have made more money.
We could have.
If we went out to the town, because there were other studios that wanted to buy it.
Right.
But at that time, we had struggled for 6 or 7 years. They offered us $400,000 to just take it off the table preemptively. We're like 400 against 700, like we were talking about before.
Okay.
400, and then if it gets made, 700. And so we're like, done. Just take it.
Yep.
Because you could go out and no one would want to buy it, or because no one else wants to buy it, now Universal offers you less.
But that's also phenomenal money. Now, if you only have one in your career and you're done, but if you have a lot of opportunities, like right now you have so many things going on, that's phenomenal money when things are great, right?
Yeah.
Because you're your own agent. That's, you know.
But you also have to take off 26.5%. Because there's 1.5 that goes to WGA dues, 5% goes to your lawyer, 10% goes to the agent, and 10% goes to the manager. And then you got to take 30% out for taxes.
Oh yeah.
So like you just start, and then you got to divide it by 2 because there's 2 of us.
Yep.
So it's good. We're not complaining.
But it's peaks and valleys. We've been in the Writers Guild 17 years. We had 2 years where we made nothing. And there's other years we did really, really well. And then there's 2 years we did nothing. And there's other years that were solid and other years that were not as good as the year before. So it's very up and down.
Yes.
You know, now, thankfully, we've been able to have a few things produced. So we get residuals, which is a nice kind of stream of income. And residuals are what you get paid when the movie shows up on TV or they sell a DVD. And so those help.
It's interesting. I remember the phone calls. I remember the phone call we got from Mike Isolde, exactly where I was getting it, where he said he loved live bet. I remember getting the phone call from Ramsey Sinchereski saying that, Universal wanted to buy it preemptively. I remember that. I remember the phone call we got from Todd Harris, who was a manager at that time. He was the head of literary at William Morris, when he loved that, independent summer rental, because it's the best thing I've read in 10 years.
Come on.
Yeah. And so you just remember those things and those little moments, those little victories, they sustain you during the leaner years, and they help you overcome the adversity that you're bound to, encounter.
And you know what I will say, it does help. Another reason why it helps that there's 2 of us is that something will happen and, I'll be really down and Vlas will be like, screw those people. Like, don't worry about it. Like,
it's true.
Or he'll be down. I'll be like, hey, don't worry. What about this idea? Remember? And we'll just push each other along. And they even say,
true.
Like in survival situations, if there's 2 of you, you get further because one is pushing the other.
Yeah.
Instead of if you're just on your own, it'd be easy to wallow and kind of, just kind of spiral. So I do think that
100%.
helps.
And your brothers. It's not just a partner where you just come together. It's like, if you're not eating, he's not eating, and vice versa.
Exactly. I know that this is bad for his kids and his family.
And you feel awful. You want to make money so that he can, so his family can have whatever they need. And absolutely.
Pros and cons, right? And then you guys can bash each other's head when you disagree.
And that's the con. Sometimes that happens because it's unfiltered. We would never say some of the things to like a fellow writer. And it's like, but there's also all that positive. So
absolutely.
And with animation, because now we work with lots of people, it reminds me sometimes, because we'll be very direct and blunt with each other, but you can't do that in this modern workplace. You can never. Because you're offending everyone. I'm like, this sucks. What are you talking about? We can't do this. I would never say that to the people that we work with, but we say that. So then it's helped also make it where smooth the edges. Even just when we work now, just try to be more mindful of
we have been more mindful, and we should even be more mindful.
Well, and you got to be on eggshells, especially everyone's offended by everything now. And in your industry, it's magnified. It's just cookie cutter. Exactly. Amazing. Question number 2 from 10-year-old Jackson Gunderson. Is it cool knowing that you guys made Superman famous?
Oh, listen, Henry made himself famous.
So he's talking about Henry Cavill?
Henry Cavill.
Okay.
There's a story. I'm not sure if I...
But I want you to tell the story, but just want to speak to that very quickly. So just so maybe the audience, they may not know kind of where that question's coming from. So we had cast Henry, and then while we had cast him, Zack Snyder...
made the movie. We shot the film.
Yeah, we made the movie, shot the film. And then Zach cast Henry to be Superman. Yeah. So that was a really big moment
for our movie too.
Yeah.
So right after Immortals,
we filmed the summer of 2010 in Montreal. And then that fall, when he went home, he auditioned for Superman and then got cast. And then our film came out in November of the following year. Yeah. And so it was great. This is your chance to see the new Superman. Yeah. You know what I mean?
With his shirt off and fighting and doing it. Yeah. That's huge.
I will share this story but I will lose some names because Henry's a first-rate guy. But what was really interesting...
Is this the casting?
Yeah, the casting. So 2 things. I'll share another quick story, because just to show you how little say writers have. Tarzan, because he's a class act, he's a genuinely great guy. He's the director of Immortals.
It's awesome.
He would always keep us involved and always kind of loop us in. And one time he had us come over the house to see some auditions. And we actually saw, this is before we get to the Henry story, another story. we saw Luke Evans, who's gone on to have a really wonderful career. At that time, he hadn't been in really any movies. He'd been mostly a theater guy. And we said, Tarzan, this guy, Luke, he's great. You got to find a part in the movie. And Tarzan was like, oh, okay, whatever. He didn't really pay too much attention to it. Okay. But then the next day he called us. He goes, I showed my girlfriend the audition.
He goes, you fucking Greeks.
Yeah, that's how he started.
You fucking Greeks. Yeah. You were right.
Yeah. I showed the auditions to my girlfriend, and she really liked the same guy you liked. And so we're going to find a part for Luke. And afterwards, Vlas and I joked, is that the director's girlfriend has more say in casting than the writers.
Than you guys. Yeah. That's amazing.
But the one story I'll share about Henry, and I don't think this has ever really been told. I hope it's okay. But before the movie got made, Henry was up there in Montreal for like 3 months training and working out. And he was like, they had amazing trainers and they had nutritionists, and like they had to eat and work out certain times of days, and they were doing 2 or 3 workouts a day. And right before the movie filmed, someone very high up involved in the production had a dinner and invited all the cast. And they kind of wanted them to kind of kiss the ring a little bit and kind of, show some love to them. And the whole cast showed up, but Henry had just worked out. And so he came in kind of like workout clothes. And they had the dinner. Everyone else was all dressed up. And this person felt like, hey, you know what? I'm not sure he should be the lead of the movie. He doesn't feel like a movie star.
That's crazy.
And he's like, maybe we should recast and put someone else in this part.
Insanity.
And this is like a week before they start filming. So
sorry, who was saying this? One of the senior. You can't say, but it was a senior.
Someone high up in the kind of hierarchy of chain of command.
Yeah.
And so they approached Tarzan about this. He's like, no, absolutely not. He's the right guy. Just give me, I don't know if he said a week or two, because the first week they were filming when Henry's mom gets killed and he runs and he kills all these guys. And Tarzan knew, he said, just give me this first week. Let's see how he does. Don't recast him. And long story short, eventually as they start filming, like word starts to trickle out that there's some concern and they might want to replace him. And it even gets back to like Henry's agents. And Henry's like, what's going on? And he asks Tarzan, and Tarzan's like, just trust me. Like right now they have the power, but you're going to deliver. And when the movie comes out, you'll have the power because then they'll need you to help sell the movie and this and that. He's like, don't worry, I have your back. And sure enough, they filmed that sequence. Henry did great. They said, no, we'll keep him in the movie. But the irony is that then when he got cast as Superman, this person that wanted to replace him was like, I knew we had the right guy. I knew,
Are you kidding
That's just
me?
how like Hollywood is, it's.
And he did an amazing job.
Yeah. And there's no one more dedicated.
No one better for that part than Henry.
And it's not easy to play a hero. It's not easy. He gives, I'm telling you, there are scenes that I wish that we had written that didn't make the movie that I wish we had. And it would have given Henry even more. But even what he had, I'm telling you, I think it's a very good, understated performance. And I think he's very good in that. But that's how ridiculous our business can be sometimes.
But you guys gave him his opportunity to be a superstar, is what Jackson said.
It was Tarzan. And then Henry's, hard work. And what was cool is that like, Henry, like Vlas said, was just like super cool, awesome on set. He would always hang out with Mickey Rourke's body double, Mark Cooper, who's this like super cool stunt man who was like the Marlboro Man back in the day. He's like the Brad Pitt character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then his makeup person, who's this amazing Greek woman who's this amazing makeup artist. And they would always just like, Nicoletta, and they would just always smoke and hang out. And like, he was such a good dude. And so that's why we were so happy for him that then he got cast as Superman.
He blew up, yeah. Side note, Mickey Rourke, guy's legendary. Yeah. How is he in real life?
He was great. He was great.
He was just really professional, good guy, was very giving to Henry.
Yeah.
There was even some things that, maybe Tarzan overstepped a little bit. He's like, to get Henry mad, he would have Mickey say something kind of like really crazy, but Mickey wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But all of them, everyone again was working to try to, to do what was best for the movie, best for the characters. Yeah. But Mickey Rourke was great, man. He was just like a true professional. And I'm telling you, and we spoke about it briefly before, when the camera was on him, the emotional truth, Mickey Rourke brings emotional truth to every role.
And he just holds the camera. He has that magnetism.
The camera has that magnetism, and there's that it factor.
There are some actors, you meet them and they just radiate. And you're like, oh, wow. Yeah. Like you understand why they connect with the camera. Because as the audience, you're just peering through that window and you're connecting with them. And some actors have it and others not as much.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Last question from Jackson. All right. Any movies, shows, scripts that I should be watching, he should be watching, that have just great writing that he should start learning from, aside from anything that you guys are assigned to?
Okay, so age appropriate. That's
10-year-old boy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at some point, I feel, and because again, maybe this is just colored, or maybe I'm looking at it through the lens of like the experience I had. But I remember, and Charlie knows this, I remember reading All About Eve, that script, and I was just blown away by it. Just blown away by like how well it was written, how well it was crafted. And he might have to, you get a little bit older. I mean, it's not really inappropriate, but just the craft and the writing was fabulous. And, Paul Anastasio, and I loved his work too. I love Quiz Show. I love Donnie Brasco, the way he writes, the way he talks about like, you always got to keep tightening the screws. He's just a great writer. And then
what I would say for age appropriate, there's a bunch of scripts we can give him to read. I think that in terms of just read novels, there's great, like read all the classics, read, Dickens. I think those are still very accessible even for a younger reader. And then in terms of TV, just because like I know how we are with our daughter and what we let her watch and not watch.
Sure.
Like go watch old network TV shows from the 90s that are good. Like something like Quantum Leap, which you can now watch the old Quantum Leap. Because what's great is that all those stories have great beginning, middle, and ends. And they're really well written.
Right.
And they're age appropriate. And they're just great stories. Like I remember watching that, in middle school and when that was out, and in high school when that was airing, like a show like that, like the original Law and Orders are so good, but now there's death and murder and
right.
he's a little young for that. Quantum Leap he can watch.
For age appropriate, like the best ones in my opinion, read Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 3. Yes. Those are great scripts.
1 and 3.
1 and 3. 3 too, especially. And it's funny because we worked with Dan Lin, who's a huge producer, and he says like Toy Story 3 is his favorite script. That's a really, really great script because again, I think it's very important, maybe not necessarily for a 10-year-old, but as he gets older, to be reading, whoever wants to become a screenwriter, to be reading as many screenplays as you can and teleplays. And that's so important because
books.
And books absolutely too, but it helps to read good screenplays and to read all kinds of screenplays, even ones that aren't so good, because then you're going to see kind of, what did this writer, the choices that writer made weren't as good. But when you read the Pixar, especially Toy Story 1 and 3, you see how they do, again, the things that we're talking about, internal, external stakes, and there's a theme. Now, he may not understand that, but as he gets older and if he rereads them, he can only learn from them. So
Amazing.
I think those would be good age-appropriate scripts.
And you should watch It's a Wonderful Life because that's the
greatest. That's
brilliant.
absolutely
Brilliant. One of my favorite films.
And it's just important just to just be, what we always say, like whenever we have something bad happens or there's a disappointment, we say either go see a movie or read a script that's sold. Because if it's a good movie, it inspires you.
Yes.
If it sucks, it's always like, oh, we can do better than that. And that got made, So it always lifts us up. And we feel the same way when you read something. If you read something that's sold, like, oh, this is really great. And for whatever reason, we felt like, no, we can do this. Like either you're like, oh, I can do this as well, or this isn't that good. And, and this sold. So, we always say sometimes we just need to fill the tank and we'll read for 2 or 3 days or we'll binge a series.
Right.
It's just important to always do that because the more you take in, the more you have to give out.
Yeah, it's incredible feedback. Sure. Yeah. Guys, this has been incredible. Thank you for taking the time to sit down.
Thank you for having me.
Just open up, man. Like this is, again, this isn't written that you guys should be where you are, so successful. And coming from Jersey, doing all this, it's incredible. We're proud in general. I'm proud that you guys are Greeks doing this, right? From our community. It's huge.
People, we are very lucky. We always say we're very lucky to be Greek. And George, we're proud of you. We're proud of Spiro, all those guys when we meet up. Because also too, though, we're not defined by what we do for a living or what money we make or what money we have or don't have. So it's what kind of person you are.
Absolutely.
Do you have philotimo? Are you valuing the things that are important in life? And that's what's great about that kind of dinner group It's that it's all good guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all good guys.
We live in a society, and because we all live in Southern Orange County, and a society, sadly, that defines people by the wrong things. You're defined by what you do. You're defined by how much money you make. You're defined by what car you drive, what house you live in, and none of that's important. All that turns to dust. You're truly defined by your moral core. Yeah. Who are you as a human being? And that matters, that this person is a good, honest, decent human being, that they're humble. We just try to stay humble.
Absolutely.
You say we're successful. I mean, I just we're just trying to stay humble. We're just trying to work hard. We're trying to provide for our families, and we're trying not to force things, and where it goes, it goes. But we always, along that journey, have to be growing and learning, and just trying to be the best versions of ourselves, and to be kind, and to treat other people with respect. And if we can do that, and if we can be, good human beings, good parents, then that's success,
It's inspiring, guys.
No,
Thank you.
Your pleasure.
What's the best way for everybody to get in contact if anyone wants to get in contact, or not, maybe?
No.
Well, just be mindful too. People come ask us, all the time. So there's only so much time in the day. And the only thing I would say is that it's important for us to be, good fathers, good husbands. And so when we're doing some other things, we always have to be busy. That sometimes we don't want to take away from family. So there's be mindful, but we're the door is always open. If someone puts in the hard work, we want to try to help them.
Yeah. What I've started to do and tell people, there's a very famous article that went around Hollywood, No, I Won't Read Your Effing Script. And it was this very Oscar-nominated writer who, at a party, his cousin's boyfriend said, "Oh, I have a script," and he said, "Will you read it?" And he felt obligated, and he read it, and he gave the guy notes, and the guy was angry, and it became this disaster, and this guy hounded him for months. And so he goes, "That's why I don't read anyone's script." We don't take that approach. We always try and, if we can give advice, if we can help. We've helped, we helped a writer friend sell a script to MGM. We helped a writer friend sell a script to Warner Brothers. There's other projects we've helped people. If we can help, we will try and help. But the one rule I take is that I will only read your script once. And so there's times where I've read something, I've liked it, I've been able to pass it on and help. But once I've read one of your things, I will never read anything else. So make sure, and this is a thing it took us many years to learn, when you write, you're excited, you've written something, and there's this excitement that you've finished it, but make sure this is the one that other people have read it, they're excited. And, and if I can, because part of it is every time I read a script, like Vlas said, that's 2 or 3 hours away from my family. And so I say, I give no notes unless it's something that I want to share. So don't expect it, because then that's more work and more time. And just know that if you ask, there was a girl she was a huge Blood of Zeus fan on Twitter. And she said, will you read my script? And I said, I will, but this is my rule. It's one time and that's it. And then I read it. There were some ideas that were interesting, but it needed a lot of work. And I said, listen, for me, this isn't something that I'm excited enough to pass on. She's like, will you read a rewrite? I said, no, I told you, this is my rule. This is time away from my family, my wife, my daughter, from doing work that pays my bills. You get one chance. And I stick to that rule. Absolutely.
And that's extremely, let's just talk about this, right? That's extremely generous that you even read, just because I always say this too. I get frustrated in my space. People will say, hey, we're doing this new design of this. Can you jump on an hour call with your designers and come up with some renders and whatever? And
it's asking a lot.
Just an hour, 2 hours. You can't just ask, oh, I met someone today who writes, I'm going to try to milk it. People need to be respectful.
Exactly.
And then you get the other side of it where these guys are assholes. I asked them to read it and they said, no, they're too high up in the chain. Well, no, 2 hours out of your life.
Yeah. And also our business, the currency you trade in is your relationships and your taste. So, if I recommend something, people will read it, but that's why it has to be good. And I always tell people too, this is just my opinion. The first script we sold, there was a manager we knew that was a hustler, and we're like, oh, he's going to love this, and we're going to, and we gave it to him. He's like, that's a pass for me.
Yeah. We were surprised.
2 months later, we sold it for $500,000. You know what I mean? I just say, this is my opinion.
Absolutely.
If I really respond to something, I'm always happy to try and help people, because the way we feel as writers is that what you write is going to be different than what I write. We write what we write. You will write what you write. So I don't view it as competitive. And if I can help someone, I always try and help someone. But There's only so much time in the day.
There's only so much.
And what, like, even like what I always ask is like, how many scripts have you written? If it's your first script, I guarantee you it's not going to be the one.
But you can't read someone if it's their first script. Like,
Well,
you guys are at such a level.
No, but it won't be any good. It just won't be any good.
Yeah.
And so again, like, listen, there's nothing we like more. There's nothing that makes me happier than seeing families succeed. And the only other thing I like than that is seeing Greeks succeed.
Yep.
And so if there's someone that we could help and they're doing the work and they're doing the right things, if we could help, absolutely. But you also have to remember too, we're not Leonardo DiCaprio where, like, you know, people jump. Like, you have to deliver. There are no favors in this business. Not like at that level where they'll buy a script. Like, it has to stand on its own. Writing, of all the disciplines in our business, is the one that's a meritocracy. Either this is good, this is commercial, and also too, you can also write something that's very good, but this is a business. People have to feel that it's going to get eyeballs, that they'll make money off of it.
Absolutely.
So it also has to be commercial too. You know what I mean?
Time is our most valuable asset. So as you mentioned, you know, we just ask that, you know, people are respectful of that.
Yeah.
And as Charlie mentioned, if there's someone that we can help, absolutely we will try, because we've been there. We've been those guys looking up, trying to make it in. And we always wish to have someone to take us under, you know, just someone to help us in any way.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we would definitely do that,
Yeah.
but as long as they've earned it.
But you get some of it. Like, I know, like, Melina Canacrease is a friend. She was in Providence, CSI in New York. She's like as good. Her and her husband Pete are like, they're as good of Greeks as you will find. Like, truly great people that we would be friends with, even if not, we were just back in New Jersey. You know? And, but, like, you know, they'll get approached like at church and be like, "Oh, can you read this script?" It's like, you know, what do you want her to say?
What do you want? Like, on the spot,
you know?
what do you want? The other thing, my 8-year-old, I'm teaching her this from now. Don't ask anything from someone. Try to see if you could bring value, whatever that may be. Information. Charley, Vlas, is there anything I would like to be in this industry 10 years from now? Is there anything I could do to just bring value to you guys? Research, whatever.
That's great.
Like, bring value to someone before you start even thinking. Because I always say this, one email, anyone could just send an email. Well, guess what? You're just trying to suck time out of my 24-hour days.
Exactly.
I have kids. That's my free time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So people just need to be more aware of that.
More mindful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's good advice.
You guys are awesome, man.
You're awesome.
Thank you so much.
George,
Thank
always
you,
a
guys.
pleasure.
Real pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Invigorate Your Business with George Stroumboulis. Please hit the subscribe and like buttons and follow me on all the main podcast streaming channels. Also, please share your comments when you can. I appreciate your help in expanding this network to a worldwide audience. Until next time, stay invigorated.